Story 1. You're like a brother to me, my fiancée said through tears the night she confessed she was leaving me for her childhood best friend. When I asked why she'd said yes to my proposal 6 months earlier, she shrugged and said, I thought these feelings would go away. I just nodded and left. That was 2 years ago. Yesterday, she called out of the blue after seeing my engagement photos online, her voice cracking as she asked if we could talk about what happened. I simply replied, sure thing, sis, that's what family's for. The rain hammered against my apartment window the night Claire told me she was leaving. I'd just gotten home from a double shift at the hospital. I'm a physical therapist, and Fridays always run long, when I found her sitting on our couch with red-rimmed eyes and a tissue box in her lap. We need to talk, she said, and those 4 words carved a hole through my chest before she even continued. She told me about Marcus. Her childhood best friend. The guy she'd grown up next door to in suburban Connecticut, the one who'd moved to Seattle for work 3 years ago. They'd been texting more lately, she explained. Video calling. He'd flown back for his mother's birthday last month, and they'd gotten coffee. Nothing happened, she insisted, though her hands trembled as she twisted the tissue between her fingers. But I can't stop thinking about him, Jake. I thought it would pass, but it hasn't. I remember staring at the engagement ring on her finger, the one I'd spent 4 months' salary on, the one she'd cried over when I proposed on the beach in Cape Cod last October. 6 months we'd been engaged. We'd already booked the venue, a historic barn in Vermont, for next spring. Her mother had started addressing invitations. Why did you say yes? The question came out flat, devoid of the anger I thought I'd feel. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and her face crumpled. I thought these feelings would go away. I convinced myself I was just nostalgic, that what we had was real and lasting. A pause. And I do love you, Jake. But it's not the same, I finished for her. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. You're like a brother to me. My best friend. I'm so sorry. I stood up. Grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door. She called after me, asking where I was going, but I couldn't stay in that apartment another second. I drove to my buddy Trevor's place across town and slept on his couch. The next morning, I came back while Claire was at work and packed my things. Left the ring on the kitchen counter. Moved into a studio apartment in Cambridge that smelled like old carpet and someone else's cooking. That was 2 years ago. The breakup nearly destroyed me. Not in the dramatic, movie version way where I trashed hotel rooms or drowned myself in anything to numb the pain. Instead, it was quieter. More insidious. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and remember the way she used to steal my hoodies, or how she'd laugh at my terrible puns, or the specific shade of green her eyes turned in summer sunlight. I'd remember planning our future, the house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, growing old together. All of it, apparently built on a foundation of her uncertainty. Trevor stayed close during those first awful months. He'd show up at my apartment with takeout, force me to go to the gym, drag me to Celtics games even when I insisted I wasn't up for it. My sister Emma called every Sunday without fail. My parents flew up from North Carolina to visit twice, my mother fussing over my weight loss and my father suggesting I take up woodworking to keep my hands busy. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into my patients, staying late to review treatment plans, taking on extra shifts whenever they were offered. Physical therapy requires you to be present, focused entirely on the person in front of you. There's no room for your own pain when you're helping someone relearn to walk after a stroke, or coaching a high school athlete through post-surgical recovery. I avoided social media entirely for the first year. Deleted every app from my phone. Trevor told me, because I'd asked him to keep me informed, that Claire and Marcus were together. That they'd moved in together in Seattle. That was all I needed to know, all I could stomach knowing. Slowly, incrementally, life began to feel bearable again. Then, surprisingly, it felt almost good. I started dating casually about 14 months after the breakup. Nothing serious at first, coffee dates that went nowhere, a few second dates that fizzled out. I wasn't looking for anything, really. Just trying to remember what it felt like to connect with someone new, to laugh over dinner, to feel that small spark of possibility. Then I met Sarah. It happened at a friend's wedding, of all places. The irony wasn't lost on me, showing up solo to watch 2 people promise forever while my own forever had imploded. But the bride was Emma's college roommate, and I couldn't skip it without disappointing my sister. Sarah was the wedding photographer. I first noticed her during the reception when she was crouched beside the dance floor, camera raised, capturing the flower girl twirling in her dress. Something about her focus, the way she anticipated moments before they happened, caught my attention. We ended up at the bar simultaneously during a lull in dancing. She ordered a ginger ale, she was working, she explained, and I asked about her camera equipment because I genuinely knew nothing about photography but wanted a reason to keep talking to her. She laughed at my transparent excuse. You could have just said hi. Hi, I said. I'm Jake. I'm terrible at small talk and I noticed you haven't sat down once in 5 hours. Sarah. And that's the job. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. But I appreciate the concern. How do you know the happy couple? We talked through most of the reception after that. She told me about her photography business, how she'd quit her corporate marketing job 2 years ago to pursue it full time. How terrifying and exhilarating it had been to bet everything on herself. I told her about physical therapy, about the satisfaction of watching patients achieve goals they'd thought impossible. We didn't talk about our pasts, our failures, our heartbreaks. Just about who we were now, in that moment. Before the night ended, I asked for her number. She gave it to me without hesitation. Our first official date was at a small Italian restaurant in the North End. Sarah arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing profusely. A last-minute client call had run long. She wore a navy dress and had small paint stains on her fingers that she tried to hide until I asked about them. I've been trying to paint, she admitted. Terribly, I might add. But there's something meditative about it. We talked for 3 hours. The restaurant staff began stacking chairs around us before we finally noticed how late it had gotten. Walking back to our cars, Sarah told me she'd had a serious relationship end badly a few years ago. She didn't go into details, and I didn't press. I mentioned Claire briefly, ex-fiancé, ended about a year ago, still processing it sometimes, and left it at that. Is this okay? She asked, gesturing between us. Dating again? I don't want to be a rebound. You're not, I said, and I meant it. I'm ready. Or at least, I want to be ready. With you. She kissed me then, soft and brief, her hand touching my jaw. Let's take it slow. We did. Sarah and I spent the next year building something genuine. She met Trevor and his girlfriend Melissa, and the 4 of us started doing double dates, trivia nights, hiking trips, cooking dinners at each other's apartments. She got along with Emma immediately, the 2 of them bonding over their shared love of terrible reality television. When my parents visited for Thanksgiving, Sarah charmed them completely by asking my father detailed questions about his woodworking hobby. Our relationship was different from what I'd had with Claire. Calmer, maybe. Less intense in those early butterflies in your stomach ways, but more solid. We communicated better. When conflicts arose, and they did, because all relationships have them, we talked through them instead of letting resentment build. Sarah had her own apartment in Somerville, and I'd finally upgraded from my studio to a 1-bedroom in Brookline. We spent most nights together but maintained separate spaces. Neither of us was in a rush. Then, about 18 months after our first date, something shifted. We were having dinner at her place, just a regular Tuesday evening, when she looked across the table and said, "I want you to meet my parents." "I'd love that," I replied. "No, I mean." She set down her fork. "I want them to meet you because you're important. Because I'm serious about this. About us." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm serious too." A month later, I asked her to move in with me. She said yes without hesitation. We found a 2-bedroom apartment in Cambridge with good light for her photography work and a small balcony where we could have morning coffee. By the time we'd been together 2 years, I knew I wanted to marry her. I asked Emma to help me pick out a ring. We spent a Saturday afternoon going to jewelers, where my sister grilled sales associates with questions I never would have thought to ask. Eventually we found it, a simple platinum band with a round diamond, elegant without being flashy. Very Sarah. I proposed on a random Thursday evening in October. No grand gesture, no elaborate plan. We'd gone for a walk along the Charles River after work, and the sunset was hitting the water just right. Sarah had her camera, snapping photos of the ducks and the sailboats. I waited until she lowered the camera and turned to me with that smile I'd fallen in love with. "Marry me," I said. She blinked. "What?" I pulled out the ring box. "Sarah Chen, will you marry me?" Her hands flew to her mouth. "You're serious?" "Completely serious. I love you. I want to spend my life with you. So what do you say?" "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Obviously yes." We told our families that weekend. Posted photos on social media the following Monday, us on the bridge where I'd proposed, Sarah's hand prominently displayed, both of us grinning like idiots. The outpouring of congratulations felt overwhelming in the best way. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls. My mother cried happy tears. Emma started a group chat to begin planning wedding logistics. Trevor sent a video of himself and Melissa cheering with champagne flutes. Then, 3 days after we'd posted the photos, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Massachusetts area code, but not one I had saved. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Jake?" The voice was hesitant, achingly familiar despite the years. "It's Claire." My stomach dropped. I walked out of the living room where Sarah was editing photos and stepped onto our balcony, closing the door behind me. "Claire," I said carefully. "This is unexpected. I saw your engagement photos." Her voice wavered. "On social media. Through Emma's account, we're still friends on there." I hadn't even thought about that. Emma had remained cordial with Claire after the breakup, though they rarely interacted. I'd never asked my sister to cut ties completely, that felt petty and controlling. Okay, I said, not sure where this was going. Can we talk? The words came out in a rush. About what happened? About us. I know it's been 2 years, but I think there are things we never said to each other. Things I need to say to you. Every instinct told me this was a bad idea. Whatever closure Claire needed, she should find it with a therapist, not by reopening wounds that had finally scabbed over. But there was something in her voice, a raw vulnerability that pulled at old protective instincts I'd thought I'd abandoned. And honestly, a small part of me was curious. What could she possibly need to say now? Sure thing, I said, letting my tone stay light. That's what family's for, right? The line went silent. Then, what? You said I was like a brother to you. So sure, we can talk. Like siblings catching up. Jake, I didn't mean. When's good for you? I'm pretty busy with wedding planning, but I can probably squeeze in a coffee. I'm in Boston, she said quietly. I flew in yesterday. Marcus and I. We broke up. I've been staying with my parents in Newton. This revelation should have given me some satisfaction. Some vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. I didn't wish pain on her, even after everything. Could we meet tomorrow? There's that cafe in Harvard Square we used to go to. The one with the good scones. Tomorrow works. 2 o'clock. Thank you, she whispered. Really, Jake. Thank you. I hung up and stood on the balcony for a long moment, watching the street below. A couple walked past pushing a stroller. A jogger rounded the corner. Normal life continuing. Sarah opened the door behind me. Everything okay? I turned to her. That was Claire. She wants to meet up and talk. Sarah's expression didn't change, but I saw her process this information. About? She said there are things we never discussed. Things she needs to say. I crossed to her, taking both her hands. I don't have feelings for her anymore. I need you to know that. You're it for me. I know that. She squeezed my hands. But this is going to be hard for you. Do you want me to come with you? No, I think I need to do this alone. But I appreciate the offer. She pulled me into a hug, and I held her tight, grateful for her understanding and trust. I barely slept that night. Not because I was anxious about seeing Claire, exactly, but because I kept trying to figure out what she could possibly want to say. An apology? An explanation? Some attempt at justification? When I arrived at the cafe the next day, she was already there, sitting at our old table by the window. She looked different, thinner, her hair shorter, new glasses. But her posture was the same, that slight hunch when she was nervous. She stood when she saw me, then seemed unsure whether to hug me or not. We settled on an awkward half-wave. You look good, she said as we sat. Thanks. You too. We ordered drinks, her usual vanilla latte, my black coffee. The barista who used to know our orders had been replaced by a college student who didn't recognize either of us. Time marches on. So, I said when we were settled. What did you want to talk about? Claire wrapped both hands around her cup. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the half-formed thing I gave you that night. Okay. What I did to you was unforgivable. I should never have said yes to your proposal when I had doubts. I convinced myself I could force my feelings to be what I wanted them to be, and in doing that, I hurt you deeply. You deserved better than that. Better than me. I waited, but she seemed to expect a response. I appreciate you saying that. Marcus and I broke up 4 months ago, she continued. Turns out the fantasy of being with him was better than the reality. We fought constantly. He wanted me to be someone I wasn't, and I realized I'd built him up in my head into something he could never be. She laughed bitterly. The irony isn't lost on me. I left someone real for a daydream. I'm sorry it didn't work out, I said, and I was. Not because I wanted her back, but because I'd grown enough to wish her genuine happiness. When I saw your engagement photos, I had this moment of clarity. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. You were patient and kind and you loved me unconditionally. And I took all of that for granted. She reached across the table like she might take my hand, then thought better of it. I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think we could try again? Not right away, but maybe in time? If this engagement doesn't work out? My jaw must have dropped because she quickly added, I'm not trying to sabotage anything. I needed you to know that I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. And if there's any chance, Claire, stop. My voice was firmer than I intended. There's no chance. None. That ship didn't just sail, it sank to the bottom of the ocean and became a habitat for marine life. She flinched. I'm engaged to an incredible woman who I love completely. Sarah knows me better than you ever did, and she chose me knowing all my flaws and fears. What we have is built on honesty and trust, things our relationship apparently lacked. That's not fair, Claire protested. I did love you. Maybe you did. But not enough. And definitely not in the way I needed to be loved. I leaned back in my chair. You coming here, asking if we could try again someday, that's not about me. It's about you needing to feel less guilty about your choices. And I'm not going to absolve you of that. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm not asking for absolution. I just wanted you to know I recognize what I lost. You wanted me to tell you it's okay. That I forgive you and we can be friends or something. I shook my head. But here's the thing, I do forgive you. I did that work already, for my own peace of mind. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean I want you in my life. So that's it? We just never speak again? I think that's for the best. I stood up. I hope you find what you're looking for, Claire. I really do. But it's not going to be with me. I left money on the table for both our drinks and walked out. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from adrenaline. I'd said what needed to be said. Set a boundary I should have set 2 years ago. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire, I understand. I'm sorry. I hope you'll be happy. I deleted it without responding. When I got home, Sarah was in our office editing photos. I told her everything, the apology, the request for a second chance, how I'd responded. She listened without interrupting, her hand resting on my knee. How do you feel? She asked when I finished. Relieved. Like I finally closed a door that's been slightly ajar for 2 years. I pulled her into my lap, and she wrapped her arms around my neck. And grateful. So grateful for you. Good answer, she murmured against my shoulder. That night, we sat on the couch looking through wedding venue options on her laptop. Sarah had strong opinions about natural lighting and photo opportunities, while I cared mostly about the food quality and whether there was adequate parking. We laughed at how different our priorities were, how we'd need to compromise. This was real. This was partnership. This was love that didn't require constant second-guessing or dramatic declarations. Over the next few weeks, I didn't hear from Claire again. Emma mentioned seeing that she'd moved back to Connecticut, was living with her parents temporarily while she figured things out. I wished her well from a distance and moved on with my life. Sarah and I set a wedding date for the following October, almost exactly 3 years after we'd met. The planning process was surprisingly fun. We toured venues together, sampled cakes, interviewed photographers. Sarah's business partner agreed to handle the wedding photography as her gift to us, which made Sarah cry with gratitude. Trevor agreed to be my best man without me even having to ask formally. We were at the gym when I brought it up, both of us on treadmills. Obviously I'm doing it, he said, increasing his speed. Who else would keep you from passing out at the altar? I'm not going to pass out. You passed out when you gave blood that one time. I was dehydrated. You're going to be dehydrated from nerves, he insisted. I'll have smelling salts ready. This was friendship. Easy and comfortable, built over years of showing up for each other. My parents flew up twice to help with planning. My mother immediately bonded with Sarah's mother over flowers and decor, while our fathers disappeared to my dad's garage to work on some woodworking project. Emma threw Sarah a bridal shower that was tasteful and fun, with games that didn't make anyone uncomfortable. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong. That was Claire's legacy, the belief that happiness was temporary, that rug-pulling moments lurked around every corner. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and life just kept getting better. Work was going well. I'd been promoted to senior physical therapist and was now supervising 2 new hires. One of my patients, an elderly woman named Dorothy who'd suffered a severe fall, sent me a card after her discharge that read, "You gave me my independence back. I can never thank you enough." I kept it pinned to my office corkboard. Sarah's photography business was thriving. She'd been featured in a local magazine and had bookings extending into the next year. She came home energized from shoots, eager to show me her favorite shots and talk through her creative process. We adopted a rescue dog, a mixed breed mutt named Biscuit who was equal parts chaotic and lovable. He destroyed 2 pairs of my running shoes and one of Sarah's camera bags before we got him properly trained, but he also slept at the foot of our bed every night and greeted us like we'd been gone for years whenever we came home. Life was full in the best way. As the wedding approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The devastation of the breakup with Claire, yes, but also the slow rebuilding that followed. The decision to open myself up to dating again. The first conversation with Sarah at that wedding. Every small choice that had led to this moment. The night before the wedding, Trevor hosted a small gathering at his place for the groomsmen, just him, my cousin Daniel, and Sarah's brother Michael. We ordered pizza, watched the game, and Trevor insisted on giving an embarrassing toast about our friendship that included several unflattering stories from college. But seriously, he said when the laughter died down, "I've never seen you happier than you are with Sarah. She's perfect for you, man. I'm honored to stand up there with you tomorrow." I had to look away to keep from getting emotional. Thanks, Trev. For everything. Not just tomorrow, but the past few years. You kept me afloat when I was drowning. That's what brothers do, he said simply. The wedding day arrived crisp and clear, October at its finest. The venue we'd chosen was a historic inn in western Massachusetts with stunning foliage views and a rustic elegance that satisfied both our aesthetics. I stood at the altar with Trevor beside me, my parents in the front row with expressions of pride and joy. Emma sat next to them, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue before the ceremony had even started. Then the music changed, and Sarah appeared at the end of the aisle. I'd seen her dress during fittings, but seeing her wear it now, backlit by afternoon sun streaming through tall windows, took my breath away. She looked radiant. Happy. Sure. Her father walked her down the aisle, and when he placed her hand in mine, I squeezed gently. She squeezed back, her eyes shining. The ceremony was short and personal. We'd written our own vows, keeping them simple and honest. I promised to support her dreams, to be patient during hard times, to always refill the coffee maker when I took the last cup. She promised to call me out when I was being stubborn, to share her world with me through her photography, to love me on the ordinary days as much as the extraordinary ones. When the officiant pronounced us married, I kissed my wife with everything I had. The room erupted in applause. Trevor let out a wolf whistle that made everyone laugh. The reception was everything we'd hoped for. Good food, better company, dancing that went on until the venue staff started dropping hints about their closing time. Sarah's business partner captured moments I didn't even notice happening, my mother dancing with Sarah's father, Emma and Sarah's college friends laughing over cocktails, Trevor's terrible dance moves during the Cupid shuffle. During the toasts, Emma stood up and told a story about the first time she'd met Sarah, how she'd texted me afterward saying, "She's the one. Don't screw this up." "And you didn't," Emma said, raising her glass. "You found someone who matches you in all the ways that matter. I couldn't be happier for you both." Trevor's toast was funnier, full of questionable anecdotes from our 20s that made my mother gasp and Sarah laugh until she cried. But he ended it sincerely, "To Jake and Sarah. May you never stop choosing each other." Late in the evening, Sarah and I snuck away from the reception for a few minutes, walking out to the inn's garden. The fairy lights strung through the trees cast everything in a soft glow. Music drifted out from the building behind us. "How are you feeling, Mr. Chen Patterson?" Sarah asked. We'd decided to hyphenate our last names, a detail that had required surprisingly little discussion. "Like the luckiest man alive, Mrs. Chen Patterson." I pulled her close, and we swayed together without any real rhythm. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being patient with me. For understanding that I needed time to heal. For choosing me every day." She pulled back to look at me. "Jake, you've got this backwards. I'm the lucky one. You're kind and thoughtful and you make me laugh even when I'm stressed. You support my work without making me feel guilty for the time it takes. You're going to be an amazing father someday. Someday soon, I hope." "Me too." She kissed me softly. "But for now, I just want to enjoy being married to you." We returned to the reception and danced until our feet ached. My father pulled me aside at one point, his eyes misty with emotion. "I'm proud of you, son. Not just for finding Sarah, but for how you handled yourself after Claire. You could have become bitter, but you chose to grow instead." "I had good examples," I said, hugging him. When Sarah and I finally left, well after midnight, the remaining guests lined up outside with sparklers to send us off. We ran through the tunnel of light to Trevor's car. He'd insisted on driving us to our hotel, while everyone cheered. In the back seat, Sarah kicked off her heels and leaned against me, exhausted but beaming. "Best day of my life," she murmured. "Mine too," I agreed. And I meant it completely. No qualifications, no comparisons to what came before. Just pure, uncomplicated happiness. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in Japan, Sarah's dream destination. We explored Tokyo's bustling streets, found peace in Kyoto's temples, soaked in hot springs in Hakone. She took hundreds of photos while I practiced my terrible Japanese on bemused shopkeepers. We ate incredible food, got lost in neighborhoods with no English signs, and stayed up late talking about the future we'd build together. When we returned home, real life resumed, but it felt different now. More solid. More permanent. We settled into married life with surprising ease, learning each other's rhythms, establishing new routines. Sarah converted our second bedroom into a proper photography studio with proper lighting equipment and backdrops. I started a therapeutic hiking group for patients recovering from leg injuries. We hosted Thanksgiving at our place for the first time, cramming both our families into our small apartment and somehow making it work. On New Year's Eve, we stayed home with biscuit instead of going out. We cooked an elaborate dinner that turned out mediocre, drank champagne on our balcony despite the cold, and kissed at midnight while fireworks exploded over the city. "Resolution for the new year?" Sarah asked, still in my arms. "Just keep doing this. Being with you. Building our life together." That's not very specific. Okay, fine. I resolved to finally beat you at Scrabble. She laughed. Not going to happen. I resolved to take more photos of us, not just everyone else. Deal. Biscuit barked at a particularly loud firework, and we went inside to comfort him, leaving the celebrations outside where they belonged. January brought cold that settled deep into your bones. I'd been working with a new patient, a teenager named Marcus, different Marcus, no relation, who'd torn his ACL during basketball season. He was devastated about missing the rest of his junior year, convinced his college prospects were over. I've worked with dozens of athletes who've come back from this, I told him during one session. Better than before, even. But it requires patience and commitment to the recovery process. How long did it take you to get over something hard? He asked unexpectedly. I paused mid-stretch. What makes you think I have? You seem like someone who's been through stuff. My mom says you can always tell. Smart kid. It took about 2 years for the really hard part. But you never fully get over things. You just learn to carry them differently. He nodded, absorbing this. Did it get better? Yeah. It got so much better I can't even imagine my life turning out any other way. That seemed to satisfy him. We finished the session in comfortable silence, and I left feeling lighter somehow. Talking about my past without pain, without bitterness, that was progress. That night, I told Sarah about the conversation while we cooked dinner together. You never talk much about Claire anymore, she observed, stirring pasta sauce. There's not much to say. That chapter's closed. But it shaped you. Made you who you are now. I considered this while draining pasta. I guess it taught me what I don't want. And by contrast, what I do want. Which is this. I gestured around our kitchen, at the life we'd built. You. She set down the spoon and crossed to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. I love you, Jake Patterson. Jen Patterson, I corrected with a grin. Oh right. That's going to take some getting used to. You picked it. We picked it together. She kissed me. Now finish the pasta before it gets cold. February marked 2.5 years since that awful night Claire had broken our engagement. It also marked nearly 4 years since I'd met Sarah. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Emma called on a Sunday afternoon, her voice excited. I'm engaged. What? When? To whom? She laughed. His name is David. We've been dating for 8 months. You'd know this if you paid attention when I talk. I pay attention. You zone out when I describe my dates. But that's okay, because now you'll have to pay attention. David proposed last night at the aquarium. It was perfect. I was genuinely thrilled for her. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. When do I get to meet this David? Next weekend. Family dinner. You and Sarah better be there. Wouldn't miss it. The dinner was at my parents' place, since they'd flown back up to meet David too. He turned out to be exactly the kind of person Emma needed, calm where she was energetic, thoughtful where she was impulsive, clearly devoted to her. Sarah and David's fiancé hit it off immediately, bonding over their mutual bemusement at the Patterson family's tendency to speak over each other. Watching my parents beam at Emma and David, seeing my sister so obviously happy, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for my own happiness, but for being part of a family that had supported me through darkness and now got to celebrate together in the light. March brought an unexpected email from my old hospital administrative account. It had been forwarded from several outdated addresses before reaching me. The sender, Claire Morrison, her married name apparently. Jake, I know you said you didn't want to hear from me, and I've respected that boundary for over a year now. But I felt like I needed to reach out one more time, not to ask anything of you, but to give you an update you might appreciate. I've been in therapy for the past year. Really intensive work, dealing with why I made the choices I did and how to avoid similar patterns going forward. My therapist helped me understand that I was chasing an idealized fantasy with Marcus instead of appreciating the real, solid love I had with you. I'm dating someone new now. His name is Peter, and he's wonderful in very ordinary ways. We've been together for 6 months, and it's different from anything I've experienced before. I'm not projecting fantasies onto him. I'm seeing him as he actually is, and choosing that reality. I wanted you to know because you deserve to know that you weren't the problem. You were never the problem. I was the problem, and I'm working on fixing that. I also wanted to say congratulations on your marriage. Emma showed me some photos, with your permission, she said. Sarah seems lovely, and you both look incredibly happy. I'm genuinely glad you found that. I don't expect a response. This is just me trying to tie up loose ends in a healthier way than I did before. Take care, Jake. Claire. I read the email twice, then forwarded it to Sarah with a simple message. Thoughts? Her response came quickly. Sounds like she's doing the work she needed to do. Good for her. Are you okay? Yeah. Honestly, I'm glad she's getting help. And I appreciate her telling me instead of it being this open question. Want to talk about it tonight? Nah. Let's just watch the documentary you've been wanting to see. Deal. Love you. Love you more. I closed the email and didn't respond to Claire. She hadn't asked for one, and I had nothing to add. Her journey was her own now, separate from mine. I wished her well and moved on. April was beautiful that year. Sarah and I took long walks along the river with Biscuit, watched the trees bloom, planned a summer vacation to visit national parks out west. Her business was doing so well she was considering hiring an assistant. I was training for a half marathon with Trevor, something we'd talked about for years but never committed to. Life was good. Not perfect, we had arguments about whose turn it was to clean the bathroom, stressed about finances occasionally, dealt with annoying neighbors and broken appliances like everyone else. But it was real and substantial and ours. One evening in early May, Sarah came home from a shoot glowing with news. I've been asked to shoot a wedding in Martha's Vineyard this summer. Big budget, beautiful venue, could lead to more high-end clients. That's amazing. I pulled her into a hug. When? July 15th. It's a Saturday. I know we were planning to visit your parents that weekend, but we can reschedule. This is huge for your business. She pulled back to look at me. You're sure? Your mom was really looking forward to it. My mom will understand. I'll call her tonight and explain. Have I mentioned lately that I have the best husband in the world? Not in the past hour or so. She kissed me thoroughly. Consider it mentioned. July arrived hot and humid. Sarah left for Martha's Vineyard on Thursday to scout locations and meet with the couple. I used the solo weekend to do some deep cleaning of the apartment and catch up with Trevor. We grabbed dinner at our usual burger place, and Trevor brought up something that had been on his mind. Melissa and I are thinking about moving in together. That's great, man. About time. Is it weird that I'm nervous? I'm 34 years old and I'm nervous about moving in with my girlfriend. Not weird at all. It's a big step. You and Sarah made it look easy. I laughed. It wasn't always easy. We had to figure out whose furniture to keep, how to split chores, all the little things you don't think about. But we talked through it. That's the key, huh? Communication. That and patience. You're going to learn things about each other you didn't know. Some will be endearing, some will be annoying. But if you're both committed to making it work, you'll figure it out. He nodded thoughtfully. Did you ever think about Claire when you were moving in with Sarah? Like comparing the experiences? It was an unexpectedly perceptive question. Honestly? No. By the time Sarah and I reached that point, Claire felt like a completely different chapter of my life. A chapter I'd closed and moved past. No regrets? About Claire? None. If things hadn't ended with her, I never would have met Sarah. And I can't imagine my life without Sarah now. That's good, man. Really good. You earned this happiness. So did you. Don't let nerves stop you from moving forward with Melissa. Sarah came back from Martha's Vineyard exhausted but elated. The wedding had gone perfectly, she'd captured stunning photos, and the couple had promised to recommend her to their friends. We celebrated with takeout and a movie, Biscuit sprawled across both our laps. I love what I do, she said halfway through the film. But I love coming home to you more. Cheesy, I teased. True, though. Yeah. True. August brought Emma's wedding, a smaller affair than ours, but elegant and heartfelt. Sarah photographed it as her gift to my sister, and the images she captured were stunning. Emma and David looked radiantly happy, and watching them exchange vows brought back memories of my own wedding day. At the reception, my mother pulled me aside during a quiet moment. I'm proud of the man you've become, Jake. After what happened with Claire, I worried you'd become guarded. But you stayed open. You let yourself love again. Sarah made that easy. No, my mother said firmly. You made that choice. Sarah is wonderful, but you did the hard work of healing. Don't discount that. Her words stayed with me long after the wedding ended. September marked 3 years since Sarah and I had met. We celebrated our anniversary by returning to the wedding venue where we'd first talked, not for another wedding, but just to walk the grounds and remember. 3 years, Sarah mused, her hand in mine. Feels like longer in the best way. Because we've packed a lot into 3 years. True. Dating, moving in together, getting engaged, married, building a life. She stopped walking and turned to me. Ready for the next phase? What phase is that? Her expression turned shy, uncertain. I've been thinking we should talk about starting a family. Not right away, but maybe in the next year or so. If that's something you still want. My heart swelled. I absolutely want that. With you. Only with you. Good. She kissed me softly. Because I really want to see what kind of dad you'll be. Probably the kind who cries at school plays and can't say no to ice cream. Perfect, she said. That's exactly the kind I was hoping for. We started trying in October, approaching it with the same teamwork and communication we brought to everything else. No pressure, no strict schedules, just seeing what happened while continuing to live our lives fully. November brought Thanksgiving again, this time at Emma and David's new apartment. The whole family gathered, plus Sarah's parents and brother, all of us cramped around a table meant for 6. During dinner, my father proposed a toast. To family. The ones we're born with and the ones we choose. May we always have reasons to gather like this. Here, everyone echoed, looking around the table at these people who made up my world, my parents aging gracefully, Emma and David newlyweds still in their honeymoon phase, Sarah beside me with her hand resting on my knee, Trevor and Melissa who'd become family in all the ways that mattered. I felt overwhelmingly grateful. This was the life I'd built from the ashes of that terrible night 3 years ago. Not despite what happened with Claire, but in some strange way because of it. The pain had forced me to grow, to understand what I really needed, to recognize real love when it found me. December brought the first real snow of the season. Sarah and I bundled up and took Biscuit to the park, watching him bound through the drifts with pure joy. We made snow angels like children, laughed until our faces hurt, and went home to hot chocolate and blankets. That night, curled up on the couch with my wife and our ridiculous dog, I thought about the concept of closure. I'd thought closure meant a clean ending, a final conversation, a moment where everything made sense. But real closure wasn't like that. It was quieter. It was building a new life so full and rich that the old wounds barely registered anymore. It was choosing forward motion over backward glances. I'd gotten my closure not through any grand confrontation or dramatic revelation, but through the simple act of living well. Of choosing love again. Of trusting that happiness wasn't a trap waiting to spring shut. Claire had given me one gift, though she probably didn't realize it. She'd taught me what love wasn't. And in the negative space of that lesson, I'd learned to recognize what love actually was. Love was Sarah's hand in mine. It was Trevor's friendship that never wavered. It was my family's support through the darkest times. It was the choice to keep going when everything felt impossible. It was the decision to trust again, to risk again, to believe in again. The night Claire had broken our engagement, I'd felt like my entire future had been stolen. Like I'd never recover, never be happy again, never trust anyone fully. I'd been wrong about all of it. My future hadn't been stolen. It had been redirected towards something infinitely better. I'd recovered in ways I couldn't have imagined. And I'd learned that trust wasn't something you gave blindly, it was something you built carefully, with the right person, one day at a time. Sarah stirred beside me, mumbling something in her half-sleep. I kissed her forehead gently. "Love you," I whispered. "Love you too," she murmured without opening her eyes. Biscuit snored at our feet. Snow continued to fall outside. Life continued in all its messy, beautiful, ordinary glory. And I'd never been happier. 3 years ago, Claire had said I was like a brother to her, and those words had gutted me. Now, they were just words. A moment in my history that had led to this moment, this perfect, ordinary moment that I wouldn't trade for anything. The revenge people talk about in stories usually involves elaborate schemes or public humiliations. But the best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't revenge at all. It was healing. It was thriving. It was building something so good that the past couldn't touch it. When Claire had called asking to talk, I'd called her sis because I genuinely meant it. She was family in the sense that she was part of my history, part of what shaped me. But she wasn't my present or my future. That belonged to Sarah, to the life we were creating together. And that was the real payback, not making Claire suffer, but making myself happy. Not proving anything to her, but proving to myself that I was resilient enough to rise from the ashes. Not holding grudges, but holding on to the people who actually deserved my love. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. And I was living very, very well indeed. Story 2. For 15 years, I paid for everything in my stepdaughter's life, private school, college, study abroad, designer clothes, and her lavish wedding, while her biological father sent only birthday cards. The week before her wedding, she said, "I want my real dad to walk me down the aisle, it's just more traditional." I nodded and said I understood. At the reception, she pulled me aside. "Would you consider formally adopting me?" My financial advisor said it would help with inheritance benefits. I just stared at her, finally understanding the reason why she kept me around. That night, I made one phone call, and now she won't stop calling. Her name is Chelsea, and I've been her stepfather since she was 8 years old. When I married her mother, Rebecca, I knew what I was signing up for, or at least I thought I did. Single mom, 1 kid, an ex-husband who'd basically evaporated into thin air except for birthday cards that arrived 3 to 5 days late every year. Cards with generic messages. To my daughter printed on the front in swirly letters. Inside, he'd scrawl love, Dad, and sometimes, if he was feeling generous, he'd add hope you have a great year. That was it. That was his contribution. Me? I paid for everything. And I mean everything. Private school tuition at Westbrook Academy because Rebecca insisted Chelsea needed the best education to compete in this world. $14,000 a year. I wrote those checks without blinking. Dance lessons, art classes, summer camps where kids learn to sail and speak conversational French. New laptop every 2 years. Braces. Dermatologist appointments when she turned 13 and developed acne that made her cry. I drove her to every appointment, sat in waiting rooms scrolling through emails, just being there. When she was 16, she wanted to go to Iceland with her environmental science class. $3,000. I handed over my credit card. She came back with 200 photos of geysers and glaciers and texted me every single one with captions. "This made me think of you," she wrote under a picture of a waterfall. I saved that text. I actually saved it. When she graduated high school, her biological father, let's call him Derek, because that's his name, sent her a card that said "Congrats grad," with a $20 Starbucks gift card inside. That was his contribution to her educational journey. College was Stanford. $65,000 a year, and that was before room and board, before textbooks, before the incidentals that somehow added up to another 10 grand annually. I paid for her study abroad semester in Barcelona. $12,000 for tuition, another $8,000 for housing, and probably $4,000 more in random expenses she'd text me about. The textbooks here are so expensive. Can I get a train pass for the semester? There's a weekend trip to Morocco that would be amazing for my thesis research. I said yes to everything. Every single thing. You want to know why? Because I loved her. Because when she was 8 and I married her mother, she looked at me with these big uncertain eyes at the wedding reception and asked if I was going to leave like her daddy did. I crouched down, my knees cracked even then, and I told her, "I'm not going anywhere. I promise." I kept that promise. I walked her through her first heartbreak when she was 15. Some boy named Trevor who dumped her over text message. She sobbed into my shoulder for an hour, and I told her about the girl who broke my heart in college, how I thought the world was ending, how I survived. She laughed through her tears and said, "You're so dramatic, Mark." But she hugged me tighter. I taught her to drive. Sat white-knuckled in the passenger seat of my Accord while she jerked us through parking lots, mixing up the brake and gas pedal. When she passed her test on the first try, she screamed and threw her arms around my neck right there in the DMV parking lot. The woman behind us in line smiled at us. "Congratulations," she said, and Chelsea said, "Thanks. My dad's been teaching me for months." My dad. She said it so naturally. Those moments, scattered across 15 years, they felt real. They felt like enough. Like I was building something that mattered, something that would last beyond credit card statements and bank transfers. After college, she landed a job at a consulting firm in San Francisco. Good salary, benefits, the whole package. She moved into a beautiful apartment in Hayes Valley that cost more per month than my first house payment. I helped her with the security deposit. $3,500. She promised to pay me back. She never did. I never asked. Then came James. James was fine. Good job in tech, polite, remembered to thank Rebecca and me for dinner when we visited. He proposed to Chelsea at some restaurant with a Michelin star, got down on one knee in front of strangers who applauded like trained seals. She called me crying happy tears. He said yes. She screamed into the phone. I said yes. "Oh my gosh, Mark, I'm getting married." I could hear the joy crackling through the speaker, and something in my chest expanded and tightened at the same time. The wedding planning started immediately. Chelsea had been collecting inspiration photos on Pinterest since she was 19 apparently. Now she had spreadsheets. Color-coded spreadsheets with vendor contacts and budget breakdowns and timeline contingencies. The budget was $80,000. Rebecca and I were sitting at our kitchen table when Chelsea presented the number, her laptop swiveled toward us. She had everything itemized. Venue, catering, flowers, photographer, videographer, DJ, designer dress, bridesmaid dresses, invitations, favors, cake, rehearsal dinner. The list went on. Every line had a price tag. "Now, James's parents are contributing $15,000, Chelsea said, scrolling down. "And James and I can cover about 20 ourselves with our savings. So that leaves $45,000. I was hoping you and Mom could handle that?" She said it like she was asking us to pick up milk from the store. Rebecca squeezed my hand under the table. I felt her rings press into my palm. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "Whatever you need." Chelsea's face lit up. She jumped up and hugged both of us. "You're the best. Seriously, I couldn't do this without you." That sentence should have been a warning bell. The wedding preparations consumed the next 14 months. Chelsea called twice a week with updates, questions, mini-crises. The florist was trying to charge extra for peonies. The photographer wanted to add an engagement shoot. The venue was being difficult about the timeline for setup. Each problem required a solution, and most solutions required money. I paid the deposits. The first installments. The second installments. The final balances. I stopped opening the credit card statements after a while. Rebecca would glance at them, her mouth tightening into a thin line, but she never said anything. Chelsea was her only child. This was the wedding she'd always dreamed of for her daughter. 3 weeks before the wedding, Chelsea invited me to lunch. Just the two of us, which was unusual. Normally if we met up, Rebecca came along, or it was a group thing with James and his friends. But she specifically texted, "Just you and me? I want to talk about something important." We met at this cafe she loved in Noe Valley, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood tables. She ordered an overpriced salad. I got a sandwich I wasn't hungry for. We made small talk about the final wedding preparations, about her work, about whether the weather would hold for an outdoor ceremony. Then she got quiet. She was stirring her iced tea with a straw, around and around, the ice cubes clinking against the glass. That sound. I can still hear it. "So," she said finally, not meeting my eyes. "I've been thinking about the ceremony." "Yeah?" "Specifically the walking down the aisle part." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. "Okay. I know you've been. You've done so much for me. You've been incredible. But I've been talking to James about it, and to my therapist, actually, and I think I want my real dad to walk me down the aisle." Real dad. 2 words. They hit like a punch I should have seen coming but somehow didn't. She was still talking, her words tumbling over each other. "It's just more traditional, you know? And he is my biological father, and I think it would mean a lot to him. He's been trying to reconnect lately, and I feel like this could be a good way to, bridge that gap. Heal some old wounds. My therapist says it's important to work on those family relationships." I picked up my water glass. Took a sip. Focused on the coldness sliding down my throat. What does trying to reconnect mean? "Oh, you know. He's been calling more. We've had coffee a few times. He's really changed, Mark. He's been sober for 3 years. He's seeing someone, she seems nice. He really regrets missing out on so much of my life." 3 years sober. The wedding was 14 months of planning. Which meant he'd been sober for 2 years before he started trying to reconnect. Before there was a wedding to attend. Before there were photos to be in, a father-daughter dance to claim. "Does he know I'm paying for the wedding?" I asked. Chelsea's face flushed. I haven't gotten into specifics with him about finances." "Does he know I paid for Stanford? Mark, the study abroad? The car insurance? The apartment deposit? That's not fair." Her voice went sharp. "You're making it sound transactional. I'm just asking what he knows. He knows you've been supportive. He's grateful for that. We both are." She reached across the table like she was going to take my hand, but I'd already pulled back, wrapping both hands around my water glass. "This doesn't change anything between us. You're still my dad. You're still the one who raised me. This is just about the ceremony. One moment. The traditional thing." "Traditional?" She kept using that word. "What about the father-daughter dance?" I asked. She bit her lip. "I was thinking maybe we could both dance with me? He could start, and then halfway through you could cut in? Or vice versa?" I stared at her. 15 years. 15 years of being the one who showed up, who stayed, who paid, who cared. And now I was supposed to split a 3-minute dance, wait in the wings while Derek took his moment, his photo opportunity. "Sure," I heard myself say. "Whatever you want. It's your day." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you so much for understanding. I knew you would. You're always so understanding." We finished lunch. I paid the bill. I drove home on autopilot, my hand steady on the wheel, my mind elsewhere. Rebecca was in the garden when I got back, pulling weeds from between the roses. I told her about the conversation. "She's confused," Rebecca said, tugging at a particularly stubborn dandelion. "She's idealizing him because he's been absent. It's a psychological thing. She'll realize what she's doing." "When?" I asked. Rebecca didn't have an answer for that. The next 3 weeks blurred together. Final payments to vendors. Last-minute adjustments to the seating chart. A rehearsal dinner I paid for where Derek showed up in a new suit, shook my hand, called me buddy, and thanked me for everything you've done for our girl. Our girl. The wedding day was perfect. Crystal clear skies, temperature in the mid-70s, a light breeze that kept things comfortable but didn't destroy anyone's hair. The venue looked like something from a magazine. White chairs, flower-draped archway, string lights ready for the evening reception. Everything Chelsea had wanted. I sat in the second row. Derek walked her down the aisle. I watched my stepdaughter, the girl I'd raised, loved, provided for, hold the arm of a man who'd sent birthday cards and little else. I watched him smile for the cameras, watched him lean over to whisper something that made Chelsea laugh, watched him take his seat in the front row. The seat I should have had. The ceremony was beautiful. Chelsea cried during her vows. So did James. The officiant made a joke that landed well. Everyone laughed. I clapped along with everyone else. At the reception, I made a toast. I'd worked on it for weeks, agonizing over every word. I talked about the day I married Rebecca, about meeting Chelsea for the first time, about watching her grow into an incredible woman. I kept it short, kept it light, got some laughs. People came up to me afterward and said it was perfect, so touching. Derek gave a toast too. Talked about being blessed to see his daughter on this special day, about how proud he was of the woman she'd become. He didn't mention that I'd been the one actually present for that becoming. Nobody seemed to notice the irony except me. The father-daughter dance happened. Derek took the first half. I watched from my table, cutting my chicken breast into smaller and smaller pieces I wasn't eating. Halfway through the song, Chelsea waved me over. I joined them on the dance floor, took over, finished the dance. People applauded when it ended. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as Chelsea wanted. I was at the bar, nursing a soda and lime, when she found me. The reception was in full swing. People dancing, laughing, drinking. The DJ was playing something upbeat. Chelsea looked radiant in her dress, her makeup still flawless, her happiness incandescent. "Hey," she said, slightly breathless from dancing. "Can we talk for a second?" "Of course." She pulled me away from the bar, into a quieter corner near the bathrooms. The music was muffled here, bass thumping through the walls but the lyrics indistinct. She was holding something. An envelope. "So I wanted to give you this," she said, pressing the envelope into my hands. "It's a thank you card. For everything. I wrote it myself. I wanted you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done." I looked down at the envelope. My name written in her looping handwriting across the front. "Thanks," I said. "You didn't have to. Actually, there's something else." She glanced around, making sure no one was in earshot. Her voice dropped lower. "I've been talking to my financial advisor recently. About planning for the future, building wealth, all that adult stuff." "That's smart." "Yeah, and so she mentioned something interesting. About inheritance structures and tax benefits." Chelsea tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Basically, it would be really beneficial for me, financially, if you formally adopted me. Like, legally. It would help with estate planning, with avoiding certain taxes down the road, with making sure everything transfers smoothly when the time comes." "When the time comes?" She meant when I died. "So I wanted to ask," she continued, her eyes bright and earnest, "would you consider formally adopting me? I know it's kind of a big thing to bring up at my wedding, but I figured, we're already celebrating family and love and all that. It seems like good timing." I stared at her. At this woman I'd raised. This woman I'd loved as my own daughter for 15 years. This woman who'd just asked her biological father to walk her down the aisle because it was more traditional. This woman who was now asking me to legally adopt her for tax benefits. The pieces fell into place with a clarity that was almost physical. I could feel it, this understanding settling into my bones like cold water. She didn't want me as her father. She wanted me as her financial safety net. She'd kept me around, kept me close, kept me giving, because I was useful. Because I said yes. Because I didn't disappear like Derek had. But not because she loved me the way I loved her. Not because she valued me as a person, as a parent. I was an asset. A resource to be managed. A line item on a financial planning spreadsheet. "Mark?" Her smile was wavering. "Are you okay? You look kind of pale." "I need to think about it," I said. My voice sounded far away. "Oh. Okay." She looked disappointed. "It's just, my advisor said the sooner we do it, the better for tax purposes. But yeah, sure, think about it. We can talk more after the honeymoon." She hugged me. I stood there, arms at my sides, and let her. Then she was gone, swept back into the crowd, into the dancing and celebrating. I watched her go. Watched her laugh with James, with her friends, with Derek, who was telling some story with exaggerated hand gestures. I opened the card she'd given me. Inside was a generic message. "Thank you for everything you've done. I'm so grateful to have you in my life." She'd signed it Love, Chelsea with a heart. Nothing specific. Nothing personal. It could have been a card for a generous aunt or a family friend. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably 5 minutes. The envelope crumpled in my hand. The bass thumped through the walls. Someone shrieked with laughter nearby. Then I walked outside. The venue had a patio area, mostly empty now since everyone was inside dancing. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled through my contacts. Found the name I needed. Richard Cho. My attorney. We played golf twice a year and he handled my estate planning. It was 10:30 on a Saturday night. He probably wouldn't answer. But I called anyway. He picked up on the third ring. "Mark? Is everything okay? I need you to do something for me," I said. "Tomorrow, if possible." "Tomorrow's Sunday." "I know. I'll pay overtime. Double. Whatever you need." There was a pause. What's going on? I need you to revise my will. Remove Chelsea as a beneficiary. All of it. The trust fund, the inheritance, everything. I want it all redirected. Another pause, longer this time. Mark, this is pretty sudden. Are you sure you want to make this decision right now? In the moment? I've never been more sure of anything. Can I ask what happened? I told him. Not everything. The condensed version. The highlights. The request for adoption purely for financial benefit, after being relegated to the backup position in her wedding, after 15 years of paying for everything. Richard was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, I'll have the documents ready by Monday morning. We can review them together and make it official. Thank you. Mark? For what it's worth, I think you're making the right call. You deserve better than that. I hung up. Stood on the patio in the darkness, looking at the warm light spilling out from the reception venue. I could hear the music, the laughter. Chelsea's wedding. The wedding I'd paid for. The last thing I'd ever pay for. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Where are you? They're about to cut the cake. I went back inside. Smiled for the photos. Watched Chelsea and James smash cake into each other's faces while everyone cheered. I stayed until the very end, until the sparkler send-off, until the vintage car decorated with tin cans drove away into the night. Then I went home. The call started 3 days later. Chelsea and James were somewhere in Bali on their honeymoon, posting photos of infinity pools and sunset dinners. The first call came in the morning while I was having coffee. Mark, hey. Chelsea's voice was bright, cheerful. Sorry to bother you on your honeymoon, but I just got off the phone with my financial advisor. She said we should really move forward with the adoption thing sooner rather than later. Like, this month if possible. Could you call Richard and get the ball rolling? I already talked to Richard, I said. Oh, perfect. So he knows? He's going to draw up the papers? He drew up papers. Different ones. A pause. What do you mean? I had him revise my will. You're no longer a beneficiary. The silence stretched out. I could hear waves in the background on her end. Someone laughing in the distance. I don't understand, she said finally. I think you do. Mark, what's going on? Is this about the adoption? Because if you don't want to do it, that's fine. I just thought. It's not about the adoption. It's about everything. It's about asking me to adopt you for tax benefits a week after having Derek walk you down the aisle. It's about 15 years of me showing up and paying for everything while you kept me at arm's length until you needed something. That's not fair. Her voice went sharp. I never asked you to pay for any of that stuff. You offered. You're right. I did offer. And I meant it, every time. But I thought we were building something real. I thought I mattered to you as a person, not as a wallet. You do matter to me. You're my dad. No, I said quietly. I'm your real dad when you need money. I'm your real dad when you need someone to adopt you for financial benefits. But Derek is your real dad when it comes to walking you down the aisle. When it comes to the moments that actually matter, that people will remember, I'm just the guy who pays the bills. That's not true. You're twisting everything. I asked Derek to walk me down the aisle because I'm trying to rebuild a relationship with him. My therapist said, your therapist doesn't know that you asked me to legally adopt you 3 days ago purely for inheritance benefits. Another long silence. I need to go, I said. Enjoy your honeymoon. I hung up. She called back immediately. I declined the call. She called again. Declined. A text came through, we need to talk about this. This isn't fair. I turned off my phone. Rebecca was standing in the kitchen doorway. She'd heard everything. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know yet, I said. The calls and texts continued over the next week. Chelsea called dozens of times. So did Rebecca, trying to mediate, trying to get me to reconsider. She's just young, Rebecca kept saying. She doesn't understand what she's doing. She didn't mean it the way you're taking it. But I'd had a week to think about it. A week to look back through 15 years with new eyes. And the pattern was unmistakable once I saw it. Every major expense had been preceded by increased contact. More calls, more texts, more I miss you messages. Then the ask. Then once I'd paid, the contact would taper off again until the next need arose. The private school. The Iceland trip. The college funds. The study abroad. The apartment deposit. The wedding. Each time, she'd ramped up the affection, the closeness, the "you're the best dad ever" messages. Each time, once I'd paid, she'd drift away again. Not completely. Just enough to maintain the connection, to keep the pipeline open. I'd mistaken it for a normal relationship. For a busy young woman trying to balance her own life with staying in touch with her parents. But it wasn't that. It was calculated. Maybe not consciously calculated, but the pattern was there. Derek hadn't paid for anything. Derek had been absent for 14 years. But Derek got to walk her down the aisle. Because Derek was her real dad. Because it was traditional. But I was real enough when she needed adoption papers for tax benefits. The breaking point came 2 weeks after the wedding. Chelsea showed up at our house unannounced. Rebecca let her in. I was in my office, working on some overdue reports, when I heard voices in the living room. I came out. Chelsea was on the couch, crying. Rebecca was next to her, rubbing her back. They both looked up when I entered. "Mark," Chelsea said, her voice thick with tears. "Please. Can we just talk? I don't understand why you're doing this." I sat down in the armchair across from them. "What would you like to talk about?" "About how you're cutting me off. About how you're throwing away 15 years of our relationship over one misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding. It's clarity." "Clarity about what? That you don't love me anymore? That 15 years meant nothing?" "15 years meant everything to me," I said. "That's the problem. They didn't mean the same thing to you." "That's not true." "Chelsea. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you called me just to talk? Just to see how I was doing? Not because you needed something, not because there was a problem you wanted help with. Just to talk." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. We text all the time. You send me memes and TikToks. That's not the same thing. That's how my generation communicates. Okay. When was the last time you asked about my life? About my work, my hobbies, my friends? When was the last time you remembered my birthday without Facebook reminding you? She was staring at me, tears still running down her face. But she didn't have an answer. "I'm not your dad," I said. "I'm your ATM. I'm the person you call when you need something. And I let it happen because I loved you and I wanted to believe we had something real. But we don't. We have a transactional relationship where I give and you take. That's not fair," she whispered. "What's not fair is asking me to adopt you for tax benefits a week after choosing Derek to walk you down the aisle. What's not fair is 15 years of me being there for everything while you kept me at a distance emotionally. What's not fair is you showing up here, crying, not because you miss me or because you're hurt by what this means for our relationship, but because you're worried about losing access to my money. That's not why I'm here. Isn't it? Tell me honestly. If I was broke, if I had nothing to leave you, would you be here right now?" She didn't answer. Rebecca made a small sound, almost a gasp. I looked at her. She was staring at Chelsea, waiting for her daughter to deny it. To say of course she'd still be here. To say money had nothing to do with it. Chelsea said nothing. "I think you should go," I said quietly. "Mark. Go, Chelsea. I need time. We both do. Maybe someday we can figure out what kind of relationship we actually have, if any. But right now, I can't do this." She left. Rebecca followed her to the door. I heard them talking in low voices, heard Chelsea crying, heard the door close. Then Rebecca came back into the living room. She didn't sit down. She stood in the middle of the room, her arms wrapped around herself. "You broke her heart," she said. "She broke mine first. 15 years ago, slowly, in ways I didn't recognize until now. She's my daughter. I know. I can't choose between you. I'm not asking you to. But we both knew things had changed. The house felt different. Colder. Rebecca started spending more time with Chelsea, trying to repair the damage, trying to mediate. I let her. I didn't interfere. But I also didn't budge. The will remained changed. The boundaries remained set. Chelsea stopped calling after a month. The texts dwindled to nothing. Rebecca said she was processing and working through things with her therapist. I said that was good. I meant it. If therapy helped her understand why she'd treated me the way she had, that was only positive. But I wasn't holding my breath for an apology. I wasn't waiting for her to come back with a genuine desire to rebuild something real. People don't change that easily. Especially when they've spent 15 years practicing a particular pattern. The hardest part wasn't cutting her off. It wasn't the angry calls or the crying or Rebecca's disappointment. The hardest part was accepting that I'd been wrong. That the relationship I thought we had, the fatherhood I thought I was building, was mostly in my head. That I'd been so focused on showing up and providing that I'd missed all the signs that she was keeping me at arm's length, categorizing me as a means to an end rather than a person she genuinely loved. I'd wanted so badly to be her dad. To be the one who stayed when Derek left. To prove that biology didn't matter, that showing up mattered, that love was a choice and I was choosing her every single day. But she never chose me back. Not really. She chose my wallet. She chose the security I provided. She chose to keep me around because I was useful. And when Derek showed back up, sober and wanting to reconnect, she chose him for the meaningful moment. Because he was her real dad. Because it was traditional. The inheritance wasn't about punishment. It was about accepting reality. She didn't see me as a parent. She saw me as a financial resource. And you don't leave your estate to someone who views you as a transaction. I redirected everything to charity. Scholarships for kids from single-parent homes. Programs that help step families build genuine connections. Causes I believed in, organizations that would use the money to actually help people rather than just pad someone's investment portfolio. It felt right. It felt clean. 6 months after the wedding, on a random Tuesday evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Mark? Chelsea's voice, small and uncertain. Hi. She paused. I heard her take a shaky breath. I've been in therapy. Real therapy, like, twice a week. Working through some stuff. That's good. My therapist helped me see some things. About patterns in my relationships. About how I treat people. About how I treated you. I waited. You were right, she said. About all of it. I did keep you at a distance. I did only reach out when I needed something. And I didn't even realize I was doing it until you called me out. I thought that was normal. I thought that was how relationships worked. Relationships work lots of different ways, I said. But they shouldn't be one-sided. I know that now. I'm trying to figure out why I am the way I am. Why I push people away. Why I can't seem to accept real love without looking for the catch. My therapist thinks it has to do with Derek leaving when I was little. That I learned to protect myself by not depending on people emotionally. That I kept everyone at arm's length so they couldn't hurt me. Did I hurt you? No. That's the thing. You never did. You were always there. You were always kind. You were always my dad. The real one. Not Derek. Derek just donated some DNA. You were the one who showed up. And I couldn't see it. Or I could see it but I couldn't let myself feel it because feeling it meant being vulnerable, and being vulnerable meant I could get hurt. I closed my eyes. Leaned back in my chair. The house was quiet around me. Rebecca was out with friends. It was just me and this phone call and 15 years of complicated history. I'm not asking you to change your will back, Chelsea continued. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For using you. For taking you for granted. For treating you like a wallet instead of a person. You deserve so much better than that. You deserve better than me. You're not a bad person, Chelsea. You're a person who learned some bad coping mechanisms. Maybe. But I still hurt you. And I'm sorry. We talked for another hour. Really talked. She asked about my work, about my hobbies, about the book I was reading. She told me about her job, about her marriage, about the garden she was trying to grow on her apartment balcony. She told me about therapy, about the hard conversations she was having with herself, about trying to be better. It wasn't a fix. One phone call doesn't undo 15 years of patterns. But it was a start. A real start. We started talking more after that. Once a week, then twice. Sometimes just texting, sometimes long phone calls. She came over for dinner. Brought James. We sat on our back patio, eating grilled chicken and roasted vegetables, and it felt almost normal. Different than before, but maybe better. More honest. The will stayed changed. I told her that explicitly one evening over coffee. I need you to understand that my estate planning isn't going to change. This isn't about punishing you. It's about me making choices that align with my values. She nodded. I get it. And honestly, I think it's good. I think I needed to lose something to understand what I had. I don't want you to lose anything. I want you to gain perspective. I'm trying. And she was. I could see it. The effort was there. The intentionally. She was calling to check in, not to ask for things. She was remembering details from previous conversations. She was showing up. It wasn't perfect. We had setbacks. Moments where old patterns resurfaced. Times when she'd call and I could hear her gearing up to ask for something, then stopping herself, changing course. Times when I had to remind myself that rebuilding trust takes time, that progress isn't linear. But we were trying. Both of us. Derek faded into the background again. Turns out his rekindled interest in fatherhood lasted about as long as the wedding festivities. He called Chelsea on her birthday 6 months late. She didn't seem surprised. I think I knew, she admitted to me one day. I think I always knew he wasn't going to stick around. But I wanted to believe he'd changed. I wanted to believe he wanted me for me, not just for the good moments. And now? Now I'm working on accepting people for who they are. You showed up. For 15 years, you showed up. That means something. That means everything. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I'm not going to pretend this story has a neat, happy ending. We're still figuring things out. Chelsea and I are rebuilding something, but it's different than what we had before. Maybe better. Definitely more honest. The money's still going to charity when I die. That hasn't changed. And I don't think it will. Because this was never really about the money. It was about being seen. Being valued. Being treated like a person instead of a resource. For 15 years, I was her ATM. Now I'm trying to figure out what else I can be. What we can be to each other when transactions are off the table. It's slow work. Some days are better than others. Some days she calls and I can hear the genuine affection in her voice, the real desire to connect. Other days I can feel the old patterns trying to resurface, the conditioning of 15 years trying to reassert itself. But we're trying. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any relationship really is, two imperfect people trying to show up for each other in whatever ways they can, learning as they go, stumbling and getting back up and trying again. I'm not a villain. But I'm also not a saint. I'm just a guy who loved his stepdaughter enough to walk away when the relationship became toxic. A guy who loved himself enough to say enough. And maybe, slowly, we're both learning what love actually looks like when it's not tangled up in money and obligation and unspoken expectations. Maybe. But here's the thing nobody tells you about setting boundaries with people you love: the guilt doesn't just disappear. It sits with you. It wakes you up at 3 a.m. It whispers that maybe you overreacted, maybe you were too harsh, maybe you should have just let it go. Rebecca and I went to couples therapy. Not because we were falling apart, but because Chelsea's situation had exposed cracks we'd been papering over for years. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Patterson with gray hair and knowing eyes, asked Rebecca a question in our third session that changed everything. When Mark pays for things for Chelsea, how does that make you feel? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, relieved. Relieved how? Relieved that I don't have to choose. That I don't have to say no to my daughter. That Mark will handle it so I don't have to be the bad guy. Dr. Patterson nodded. So Mark has been managing not just Chelsea's expectations, but yours as well. The silence in that office was deafening. That's when I realized Rebecca had been using me too. Not maliciously. Not consciously. But she'd let me be the provider, the yes man, the endless well of resources so she could maintain her relationship with Chelsea without ever having to set limits or have hard conversations. She'd let me pay and pay and pay because it was easier than admitting her daughter was becoming entitled. Easier than risking Chelsea's anger or disappointment. We worked through it. It took months. There were arguments. There were tears. There were nights when we slept in separate rooms because the hurt was too fresh and too deep. But we worked through it. Rebecca started setting her own boundaries with Chelsea. Small ones at first. When Chelsea called asking for help with something she could handle herself, Rebecca said no. The first time it happened, Chelsea was shocked. So was I, honestly. Mom, I just need you to call the landlord for me about the water heater. It's not working and I'm too busy with work to deal with it. You're a grown woman with a phone, sweetheart. You can call them yourself. But you're better at this stuff. I'm really not. I'd just do it. And so can you. Chelsea complained to me about it later. I said, she's right, you know. Whose side are you on? The side that wants you to be able to function without constantly needing rescue. She hung up on me. But the next week, she mentioned casually that she'd handled the landlord situation herself. It wasn't even that hard, she said, and I could hear the surprise in her voice. The pride. Those were the moments that gave me hope. James reached out to me about 8 months after the wedding. We met for lunch at a diner near his office. He looked uncomfortable, stirring his coffee with intense focus. I owe you an apology, he said finally. For what? For not seeing it. What Chelsea was doing. How she was treating you. He looked up, met my eyes. I knew she asked you about the adoption thing. She ran it by me first. I told her it seemed kind of cold, doing it right after the wedding. But she said you'd understand, that you were pragmatic about this stuff. And I didn't push back. You're not responsible for Chelsea's actions. No, but I'm married to her. I'm supposed to help her be a better person, right? That's part of the deal. He rubbed his face. After you changed your will, she was devastated. And angry. Really angry. But then after the anger faded, she started looking at herself. Actually looking. And she didn't like what she saw. That's when the real therapy started? Yeah. She's been working hard. I know you two are talking again, building something new. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see what you did for her, for us. The wedding, college, all of it. And I'm sorry we took it for granted. We talked for another hour. James told me about his own father, who died when he was 12. About how he'd always wondered what it would be like to have a dad around for the big moments. Chelsea had that, he said. She had you. And she almost threw it away. She's young, I said. People make mistakes. Some mistakes cost more than others. He wasn't wrong. The first Christmas after everything imploded was awkward. Chelsea and James came over, bearing gifts wrapped in expensive paper. I'd gotten them gift cards, practical, impersonal. The message was clear, we're not back to normal. We may never be back to normal. Chelsea's gift to me was a photo album. Not store-bought. Handmade. She'd covered an old album in fabric, added embellishments. Inside were photos from the past 15 years, her and me at her high school graduation. At her college move-in day. At various holidays and birthdays. Pictures I'd forgotten existed. But what got me were the captions. She'd written them by hand, in the margins. The day you taught me to parallel park. I was so scared and you were so patient. When I called you crying at 2 a.m. because Trevor broke up with me and you drove to my friend's house to pick me up. You helped me write my college essays. You read 17 drafts and never complained. My first day of work. You sent flowers to the office. I acted embarrassed but I was so proud. Page after page. Moment after moment. Things I'd done. Things I'd forgotten. Things she'd noticed even while keeping me at arm's length. On the last page, she'd written, "I'm sorry it took me so long to see what was right in front of me. You were always my real dad. I was just too scared to admit it." I closed the album carefully. Set it on the coffee table. Looked at her. "Thank you," I said. She nodded, blinking fast. "I have 15 years to make up for. You don't have to make up for anything. You just have to show up. I can do that." And she has been. Slowly. Imperfectly. But consistently. She calls every Sunday now. Not because she needs something. Just to talk. She asks about my week, my health, my plans. She tells me about her life, the real stuff, not just the Instagram-worthy highlights. The fight she had with James about dishes. The project at work that's stressing her out. The book she's reading that reminded her of something I once said. Last month, she invited me to lunch. Just the two of us. We went to that same cafe in Noe Valley where she'd told me about Derek walking her down the aisle. Full circle. "I've been thinking about something," she said, pushing her salad around her plate. "About what you said. About me only calling you my dad when I needed something. Chelsea, we've moved past." "No, let me finish." She took a breath. "You were right. But I figured out why. It wasn't just about money or using you. It was because calling you dad felt real. And if it felt real, then losing you would hurt. So I kept you in this category where you were important but not too important. Where you mattered but not too much. Because if Derek could leave, anyone could leave. I told you I wouldn't leave." "I know. But I was 8. And 8-year-olds don't really understand forever. They just understand that someone promised to stay and then didn't. So I protected myself the only way I knew how. I kept everyone at a distance. Even you. Especially you." She looked up at me, and her eyes were wet. "But I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to keep people at arm's length because I'm scared. I don't want to wake up at 40 and realize I've spent my whole life avoiding real connection. So I'm trying. I'm really trying to let people in. To let you in." "I can see that," I said. "And I'm proud of you." "The will staying changed," she said. "I get it now. It's not about punishment. It's about you setting boundaries. Teaching me that relationships can't be one-sided. That love without reciprocity isn't sustainable." Something like that. Well, it worked. It hurt, but it worked. She smiled, shaky but genuine. "So thank you. For caring enough to set the boundary. For not just letting me keep using you until there was nothing left." We finished lunch. I paid, old habits, but when I reached for the check, she didn't assume it like she used to. She reached for it too, and when I waved her off, she said, "Next one's on me." And she meant it. 2 weeks later, she took Rebecca and me out for dinner at a nice restaurant. Insisted on paying. "I want to," she said when I protested. "Let me do this." It was just dinner. Just one meal. But it represented something bigger. A shift. A rebalancing of the scales. I'm not saying everything is perfect now. We still have hard days. Days when I can feel the old resentment creeping back in. Days when she slides into old patterns and I have to remind myself that change is slow. But we're building something real now. Something that exists beyond transactions and obligations. Derek called me last month. That was surreal. "Hey, Mark. It's Derek." I almost hung up. But curiosity won. "What do you want?" "I heard about the wool thing. About you cutting Chelsea off." "She told you that?" "No. Her mom did. Rebecca reached out. Said I should know what happened, how I contributed to it." I waited. "Look, I was a lousy dad. I know that. I bailed when Chelsea was little because I couldn't handle the responsibility. And then I came back because. I don't know. I guess I wanted to feel like a father without having done any of the work." "That's accurate. The thing is, watching you walk away from her, financially, I mean, it made me realize something. You loved her enough to set a boundary. I never loved her enough to even stay. And now she's got this whole life, this whole person she became, and I had nothing to do with it. You did. You raised her. You were there. And I stole your moment at the wedding because I'm selfish and I wanted to feel important. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm not asking for forgiveness or understanding or anything, Derek continued. I just wanted to say I see what I did. And I'm sorry. For all of it. For leaving. For coming back like I had any right to walk her down the aisle. For being the reason she doesn't know how to let people love her. He hung up before I could respond. I told Chelsea about the call. She was quiet for a long time. Do you forgive him? She asked. I don't know. Maybe someday. But forgiveness isn't really the point. The point is that he understands what he took from both of us. That's something, I guess. Yeah, she said softly. That's something. We're still figuring this out. Chelsea and me. Rebecca and me. All of us together, trying to build something healthier than what we had before. Some days it feels impossible. Other days it feels like maybe, just maybe, we're going to make it. The money's still going to charity. That hasn't changed. And honestly, I don't think it should. Because the lesson wasn't about teaching Chelsea to appreciate money. It was about teaching her to appreciate people. To see them as more than what they can provide. To understand that love is a verb, not a transaction. And I think she's starting to get that. Finally. Last week, she sent me a text at midnight. Just 3 words, love you, Dad. Not because she needed anything. Not because she wanted anything. Just because. I saved that text. Just like I saved the one from years ago about the waterfall in Iceland. Maybe I'm still a little bit of an optimist after all. Story 3. After emptying my college savings to pay for my mother's dream wedding, $92,000 for the venue, catering, and flowers she couldn't afford, she called to tell me I was no longer invited because her fiancé wanted an adults-only event. When I reminded her I was 19 and had paid for everything, she laughed and said, "You're still a kid to us, you wouldn't fit the sophisticated vibe." I said I understood. Last week, I called the venue manager and explained that since I'd paid for everything, I wanted to cancel and receive a full refund. Within hours, my phone was flooded with hysterical voicemails from my mother. I canceled my mother's wedding 6 days before the ceremony, and honestly, I'd do it again. Let me back up. I know that sounds cold. I know what you're thinking, what kind of person does that to their own mother? But here's the thing, I paid for the entire wedding. Every cent. $92,000. That's not a typo. That's my entire college fund, 4 years of savings from working 2 jobs since I was 15, gone in a series of wire transfers because my mother told me she was in love and this was her last chance at happiness. I'm 19. Was supposed to start at Northwestern this fall. Engineering program. Full ride academically, but I still needed money for housing, books, living expenses. I'd saved $95,000. Took me 4 years of working at a grocery store and doing freelance coding on the side. My father died when I was 14, left us with some life insurance that Mom burned through in 2 years. So I learned early that if I wanted something, I had to build it myself. We lived in a modest apartment in the Chicago suburbs, the same place we'd moved to after Dad died, downsizing from our house to save money. Then Mom met Richard. She was 53, working as an office manager at a dental practice. Richard was one of the dentists. 58, divorced twice, drove a Tesla, wore expensive watches. She'd come home every night for 3 months talking about him before they even went on a date. When they finally did, she called me at midnight, breathless, saying she'd met her soulmate. I was happy for her. I really was. She'd been lonely since Dad died. Dated a few guys but nothing serious. So when she started glowing again, started caring about her appearance, started laughing at dinner instead of just staring at her phone, yeah, I was happy. They got engaged after 6 months. Christmas Day. He proposed in front of his entire family at their holiday party. Mom called me from the bathroom, crying, saying yes over and over even though I hadn't asked her anything. That's when the wedding planning started. At first, it was small. Backyard ceremony, maybe 50 people, simple and sweet. But Richard's family had expectations. His sister had gotten married at the Belmont Estate, this massive historic venue with gardens and a ballroom, and apparently, anything less would be disappointing. His mother kept saying things like, well, when Richard married Jennifer, they had 200 guests, and Mom started feeling self-conscious. I watched her shrink a little every time Richard's family talked about their standards. His ex-wives. His daughter's sweet 16 that cost more than most weddings. The way they casually mentioned their vacation homes and country club memberships. 3 months before the wedding, Mom came to me crying. We were in the kitchen. I was making dinner, spaghetti, nothing fancy, and she just stood in the doorway with her phone in her hand, mascara running down her cheeks. He's going to leave me, she said. My stomach dropped. What happened? His family thinks that I'm not. She couldn't even say it. The wedding. They keep comparing it to his other weddings. Saying it's not special enough. Richard says he doesn't care, but I can tell he's embarrassed. His mother asked why we weren't having it at the Belmont, and I had to explain that I couldn't afford it, and she just looked at me like I was nothing. I put down the spatula. Mom, if Richard loves you, the venue doesn't matter. You don't understand. She wiped her face with her sleeve. His family has standards. I need to show them I belong. That I'm not just some poor widow he's taking pity on. The words hit me wrong. My father had been a good man. A teacher. We weren't wealthy, but we weren't ashamed. Hearing her talk like being middle class was something to apologize for made my chest tight. How much would the Belmont cost? I asked, even though I knew I shouldn't. She looked up. I can't ask you to. How much? With everything Richard's family expects. The ballroom, the catering, the flowers they're used to seeing. Probably 70 or 80,000. I felt the number like a punch. That was most of my college fund. But I looked at my mother's face, saw how small she'd become in 6 months of trying to fit into Richard's world, and I made a choice I'd regret for the rest of my life. I have savings, I said quietly. Her eyes went wide. Your college money? Absolutely not. I can defer a year. Work more, save up again. But Mom, you're only getting married once. If this makes you happy. She hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. Kept saying, thank you, saying I was saving her life, saying she'd pay me back as soon as she and Richard combined finances. That was April. By May, the budget had grown. The Belmont required certain caterers. The flowers had to be from a specific florist Richard's mother recommended. The photographer was someone who'd shot for magazines. Every time I sent a check, Mom would call and say, just one more thing, and then we're done. The Belmont had only been available because of a last-minute cancellation. Apparently another wedding had fallen through, which should have been a warning sign I didn't catch at the time. Richard's family saw it as fate. I should have seen it as a red flag. $92,000 later, we were done. I had $3,000 left in my account. Barely enough for first month's rent anywhere. Northwestern was out of the question now. I'd have to stay local, work full-time, and go to community college part-time. It would take me 6 years instead of 4 to get my degree. Maybe longer. But Mom was happy. That's what I told myself every time I checked my account balance and felt nauseous. She was happy, and after everything she'd been through, didn't she deserve that? The wedding was set for August 15th. I'd taken time off work. Rented a suit. Was planning to give a speech at the reception about how my father would have been proud to see her this happy. Then, 6 days before the wedding, my phone rang. It was Mom. I was at work, stocking shelves, and almost didn't answer. But she rarely called during the day, so I stepped into the back room and picked up. Hey, what's up? Hi, sweetie. Her voice was too bright. Artificially cheerful. So, Richard and I were going over the final head count with the venue, and we realized we need to make some adjustments. Okay? I leaned against a stack of boxes, already tired from a double shift. We've decided to make it an adults-only event. I blinked. What does that mean? No one under 21. It's going to be very sophisticated. Wine pairings, late-night dancing. We just think it'll be better without, kids running around. My brain stuttered trying to process this. I'm 19. I know, honey, but you understand, right? It's nothing personal. We just want a certain vibe. Elegant. Mature. Richard's colleagues will be there, and we want to make the right impression. The back room suddenly felt smaller. Hotter. Mom, I paid for the wedding. And we're so grateful. This is going to be such a beautiful day, and it's all because of your generosity. We'll take so many pictures to show you. You're uninviting me to the wedding I paid for? It's not uninviting. We're just setting an age limit. For everyone. Who else under 21 was coming? Silence. Long enough that I could hear the store's sound system playing something peppy and horrible in the background. Well, we have to be consistent with our policy, she finally said. Mom, I'm not some random kid. I'm your son. I gave you $92,000. And that was your choice. I never forced you. You offered, remember? Her voice had an edge now. The brightness cracking. You said you wanted to do this for me. I did want to. I wanted to be there. To celebrate with you. You're being really selfish right now. This is my wedding day. My special day. Can't you just be happy for me without making it about you? I felt something break inside my chest. Something that had been bending under weight for months, maybe years, and finally just snapped. You're right, I said quietly. It's your special day. You should have it exactly how you want it. Oh, thank you, sweetie. I knew you'd understand. You're so mature for your age. That's why this is so silly, you're really not a kid at all. But you know how Richard's family is. They have certain standards. Yeah, I said. I understand about standards. We said goodbye. I went back to work. Finished my shift. Drove home in a daze, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. That night, I sat in my room, my childhood room with its posters of video game characters and a bookshelf full of coding manuals, and I thought about my father. He'd been a high school physics teacher. Made $45,000 a year. Drove a Honda Civic for 15 years. Wore the same winter coat for a decade because it still works fine. But he'd been kind. He'd helped students who couldn't afford calculators. Slipped grocery store gift cards into the lockers of kids he knew weren't eating lunch. Spent his Saturdays volunteering at the library's homework help program. He'd taught me that character mattered more than status. That integrity wasn't negotiable. That family meant protecting each other, not using each other. My mother had forgotten all of that. Or maybe she'd decided Richard's world was worth forgetting it for. I opened my laptop and pulled up the contracts. I'd signed everything myself, the venue, the caterer, the florist, all of it. My name, my credit cards, my bank account. Legally, it was all mine. The venue contract had a cancellation policy. More than 7 days out, 75% refund. Less than 7 days, 50%. Less than 48 hours, nothing. I had exactly 6 days. I sat there for hours, staring at my phone, trying to talk myself out of what I was thinking. This was nuclear. This would destroy my relationship with my mother. Probably forever. Richard's family would hate me. Mom's friends would think I was a monster. But somewhere around midnight, I realized something. The relationship was already destroyed. She'd already chosen Richard's sophisticated vibe over her own son. She'd already decided that impressing people who looked down on her was more important than honoring the person who'd sacrificed his entire future for her happiness. I made my decision. But I waited. I wanted to give myself time to be absolutely certain. To sleep on it. To see if I'd feel differently in the morning. I didn't. For the next 3 days, I went through my normal routine. Worked my shifts. Made dinner. Pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was counting down. Testing my resolve. Waiting to see if my mother would call back, apologize, tell me she'd made a mistake. She didn't. 3 days after she uninvited me, with exactly 72 hours left before the 7-day cancellation deadline expired, I picked up my phone and called the Belmont estate. A night manager answered. I explained who I was, confirmed my identity with the account numbers, and said I needed to cancel everything. "I'm so sorry to hear that," she said, sounding genuinely sympathetic. "Is everything all right?" "Family emergency," I said. Which wasn't a lie. "Of course. Let me pull up your contracts. Can I ask what date you're canceling?" "All of it. The venue, the catering, the flowers. Everything under my name." I heard typing. A long pause. "Sir, the wedding is in 3 days. Are you certain?" "Yes. We can issue a 50% refund since we're within the 7-day window, which would be. Let me calculate with all the services. Approximately $46,000 back to your account within 5 to 7 business days." 46,000. Not the full amount, but enough to still go to Northwestern. Maybe not live on campus the first year, maybe work part-time and take fewer classes initially, but still go. Still have a future. "That works," I said. More typing. Then, "All right, I've processed the cancellation. You'll receive a confirmation email within the hour. I am sorry about your family emergency. I hope everything works out." "Thank you," I said, and hung up. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the dark, waiting. Part of me hoped I'd feel guilty. Feel something that would tell me I'd made the wrong choice. But all I felt was tired. Tired of being used. Tired of making myself smaller so my mother could feel bigger. The confirmation email came at 2 a.m. I read it 3 times, then closed my laptop and lay down, staring at the ceiling. The next call came at 9 a.m. I was making coffee when my phone started buzzing. "Mom." I let it ring out. It rang again immediately. And again. On the 4th call, I answered. "What did you do?" Her voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. In the background, I could hear Richard saying something, and other voices, probably his family. "I canceled the wedding," I said calmly. "You what?" "I canceled everything. The venue, the caterers, the flowers. All of it." "You can't do that. It's my wedding. It's my money. My name on the contracts. Legally, I can absolutely do that." She made a sound like a wounded animal. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Richard's family is here. His mother flew in from Florida. We have people coming from all over the country. You should have thought about that before you uninvited me." "I didn't uninvite you. We set an age limit. For an event I paid for. For a wedding I funded entirely by myself. And you thought it was reasonable to tell me I wasn't sophisticated enough to attend." "That's not what I said. You said I wouldn't fit the vibe. You said I was still a kid. After I gave you $92,000. I heard her breathing hard. In the background, Richard was saying something urgent, and his mother's voice cut through. What does he mean he cancelled everything? Fix this, Mom said, her voice dropping into something cold and hard I'd never heard before. Call them back right now and fix this. No. I am your mother. You do not get to ruin my life because you're throwing a tantrum. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm protecting myself from someone who used me. Used you? I loved you. I raised you. Everything I did was for you. Everything you did was for yourself, I said quietly. You wanted to fit into Richard's world so badly that you forgot who you were. And you definitely forgot who I was. She was crying now. Loud, gulping sobs. Please. Please, you have to fix this. Richard's going to leave me. His family is going to think I'm a fraud. I'll have nothing. Is that what you want? Do you want your mother to have nothing? My hand was shaking. I set down my coffee cup before I dropped it. You'll have Richard if he really loves you. And if he doesn't, then he wasn't worth $92,000 in the first place. I hung up. The phone rang continuously for the next hour. Mom. Richard. A number I didn't recognize that I later found out was Richard's mother. I turned it off and sat in the silence of the apartment, feeling strangely calm. Around noon, someone knocked on the door. Hard. Aggressive. I looked through the peephole and saw Richard. He was still in his pajamas, which was jarring. I'd only ever seen him in suits. His hair was messy, face red, jaw clenched. I didn't open the door. I know you're in there, he said loudly. We need to talk. Man to man. I almost laughed. Man to man. From the guy who let his family bully my mother into spending money she didn't have, who stood by while she uninvited her own son to appease his sophisticated standards. There's nothing to talk about, I called through the door. Open the door. Be an adult. You mean like an adult over 21? Who'd fit your vibe? He slammed his palm against the door. You spoiled little brat. Do you have any idea what you've done? Your mother is hysterical. My family is humiliated. We have 200 people expecting a wedding in 6 days. Then I guess you should start making phone calls. You think you're smart? You think this is clever? All you've done is prove you're exactly what I thought, a jealous kid who can't stand to see his mother happy. Something hot flared in my chest. I gave her everything I had. Literally everything. 4 years of my life, every hour of work, every plan I had for my future, I gave it all to her because I loved her. And she thanked me by telling me I wasn't good enough to be there. So yeah, I took it back. Because I'm not going to let people who look down on me benefit from my sacrifice. Silence. Long enough that I thought he'd left. Then, how much to undo this? What? Name your price. What do you want to reinstate everything? I stared at the door, genuinely shocked. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. You're just mad you spent yours and didn't get what you wanted out of it. So fine. What do you want? 50,000? 100? I want my mother to remember she had a life before you. I want her to remember my father, who never would have let his family treat her like a charity case. And I want her to look at herself in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. More silence. Then, you're going to regret this. When she never speaks to you again. When you're alone and you realize you destroyed your family over your pride. You'll regret it. Maybe, I said. But at least I'll still have my self-respect. He left. I heard his footsteps heavy on the stairs, heard his car start and peel out of the parking lot. I sat on the floor with my back against the door and let myself shake. The voicemails started coming in once I turned my phone back on. 23 in total. I listened to them all, masochistic enough to want to hear exactly how bad it was. Most were from Mom. Crying. Begging. Screaming. Telling me I was selfish, heartless, cruel. Telling me she'd never forgive me. Telling me my father would be ashamed. That one hurt the most, because we both knew it was a lie. Dad would have been ashamed of her. 3 were from Richard. Threatening legal action. Demanding compensation. Telling me I'd made an enemy of the wrong family. 1 was from Richard's mother, imperious and clipped, saying I'd revealed my true character and that she'd always known I was unsuitable. 5 were from my mother's friends, people I'd known since I was a kid, telling me I should be ashamed. That family comes first. That I'd broken my mother's heart. Not one asked why I'd done it. Not one asked what had happened to make me feel like I had no choice. I saved them all. Figured I might need evidence someday of who these people really were. The next few days were strange. Quiet. I went to work, came home, ate cereal for dinner. My phone kept ringing, but less frequently. The initial hysteria was fading into something harder. Colder. On what would have been the wedding day, I woke up early and drove to my father's grave. I hadn't been in a few months, too busy working, saving, planning for a future that had evaporated. The cemetery was empty except for a groundskeeper mowing in the distance. I sat by Dad's headstone and told him everything. About the money. The uninvitation. The cancellation. I told him I didn't know if I'd made the right choice, but I knew I'd made the only choice I could live with. I think you would have understood, I said to the granite marker. You always said integrity matters more than popularity. That doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always necessary. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the oak tree nearby. I sat there for an hour, just being quiet, feeling like maybe my dad was still looking out for me somehow. When I got home, there was a car in the parking lot I didn't recognize. For a second, I thought about turning around, but then the driver's door opened and a woman got out. Late 50s, well-dressed but not showy, with kind eyes behind practical glasses. Are you Marcus? She asked. Depends on who's asking. She smiled slightly. I'm Karen. Richard's first wife. That got my attention. Okay? I heard about what happened. The wedding. The cancellation. She glanced around. Could we talk? Maybe inside? I hesitated, then nodded. We went up to my apartment. I offered her water, which she accepted, and we sat at the small kitchen table. I'm going to be blunt, she said. Richard called me 3 days ago, furious, ranting about you and how you'd sabotaged his wedding. He wanted me to testify or something if he sued you. Said you'd cost him hundreds of thousands in damages. I paid for everything. He didn't lose money. I know. I looked into it. Called the venue, verified the contracts. You were within your rights. She paused. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because Richard told me the whole story. Including the part about how your mother uninvited you to a wedding you'd funded. And I wanted you to know something. I waited. He did this to me too. Not exactly the same way, but the pattern. When we got married, his family had all these expectations. We had to have the right venue, the right caterer, the right everything. My family was middle class. Teachers and nurses. We couldn't afford what his family considered appropriate. So I went into debt. Serious debt. Credit cards, personal loans, all of it. I was 25 and stupid and in love, and I thought if I could just give him the wedding his family expected, they'd accept me. Did they? For about 6 months. Then it was the house that wasn't big enough. The car that wasn't nice enough. The job that wasn't prestigious enough. I spent 5 years trying to be someone I wasn't, drowning in debt, losing myself piece by piece. And Richard never defended me. Never told his family to back off. He just kept moving the goalposts and acting like I was the problem for not being able to reach them. She took a sip of water. When I finally left him, his mother told everyone I was a gold digger. Me. The one who'd bankrupted herself trying to fit into their world. It took me years to rebuild my life. To remember who I was before I met him. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Don't be. I'm telling you this because I want you to know you did the right thing. Not the easy thing. Not the thing that'll make you popular. But the right thing. Your mother is in the honeymoon phase now, where she thinks if she can just please Richard and his family enough, they'll love her. But they won't. People like that don't love. They consume. She hates me now. She probably does. And I'm not going to lie to you, it might stay that way. Some people can't forgive the person who forces them to see the truth about themselves. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But you gave her a gift. You showed her exactly who they are before she married into that family. Whether she accepts that gift is up to her. After Karen left, I sat in the quiet apartment and let myself cry for the first time since this all started. Not for the money. Not even for the wedding. But for the mother I'd lost somewhere along the way. For the woman who used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings and help me with homework and tell me stories about my father until I fell asleep. She was gone. Maybe she'd been gone since Dad died, and I'd just been too young to see it. Or maybe Richard had slowly erased her, one standard at a time. Either way, the mother I'd known didn't exist anymore. And I had to learn to live with that. The refund hit my account a week later. $46,000. I stared at the number for a long time, feeling the weight of what it represented. My future. My freedom. The price of my self-respect. With the refund, Northwestern was possible again, barely. I called their admissions office. Explained I'd had a family emergency but the situation was resolved, and asked if I could still defer and start in January. They said yes. Financial aid would still apply. I'd have to be strategic. Live in the cheapest dorm option. Work 20 hours a week minimum. Take on more coding freelance projects. Budget every dollar. But I could make it work. It wouldn't be the comfortable college experience I'd originally planned with my full savings, but I'd be there. I'd be getting my degree. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Mom stopped calling after 3 weeks. The last voicemail she left was short. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. You ruined everything. I'll never forgive you for this. Never. I saved that one too. Richard's threats of legal action never materialized. Karen had been right, he had no case. The contracts were clear. I'd acted within my rights. And I suspected he didn't want the publicity of a lawsuit that would expose how the wedding had been funded in the first place. My mother's friends stopped reaching out. I saw them occasionally around town, and they'd look away, embarrassed or angry or both. I didn't try to explain. People who'd already decided I was the villain weren't going to listen to reason. But a few people surprised me. My manager at the grocery store, who'd heard rumors, pulled me aside one day and said, "I don't know the whole story, and you don't have to tell me. But I know your character. And I know if you did something that drastic, you had a reason. So if you need extra shifts, if you need help with anything, you let me know." My father's brother, an uncle I barely knew, called out of nowhere and took me to lunch. "Your dad told me once that the hardest part of being a parent is letting your kids see you fail," he said over sandwiches. "I think maybe your mom forgot that. Forgot that kids don't need perfect parents. They just need honest ones." Those small moments kept me going. 3 months after the cancelled wedding, I was starting to build a routine. Work during the day. Online classes at night. Saving money again, slower this time but steadier. I'd moved to a cheaper apartment, found a roommate, cut expenses everywhere I could. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Then my phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Marcus?" I didn't recognize the voice at first. Thin. Strained. Nothing like the bright, artificial cheerfulness I'd last heard. "Mom? Can I see you?" We met at a coffee shop near her work. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her, 3 months ago. Thinner. Her hair needed touching up, and she wasn't wearing makeup, which she never used to leave the house without. She ordered black coffee. I got tea. We sat by the window, both of us staring at our drinks instead of each other. "I'm not here to apologize," she said finally. "I'm still angry at you. I'm still hurt." "Okay. But I need you to know something. Richard and I aren't getting married." I looked up. "What happened?" She laughed, but it was bitter. "Empty. Everything you probably thought would happen. After the wedding got cancelled, his family turned on me. Blamed me for raising such a disrespectful son. Said I clearly hadn't instilled proper values. Richard started pulling away. Making excuses not to see me. His mother told him he was lucky he found out what kind of family he was marrying into before it was too late. I'm sorry." "Are you?" She met my eyes for the first time. "You tried to warn me. In your way. And I didn't listen. I was so desperate to be someone else, someone who fit into their world, that I forgot who I actually was. Dad used to say you were the strongest person he knew." Her face crumpled. She covered it with her hands, shoulders shaking. I reached across the table and held her wrist, not pulling, just connecting. "I miss him so much," she whispered. "Every day. And I think I was trying to fill that hole with Richard, with his family, with a life that looked successful from the outside. But all I did was make the hole bigger." "You can fix it," I said. "Not with me. Not right away. I'm still hurt too. But you can fix it with yourself. Remember who you were. Who Dad loved." She nodded, wiping her eyes with a napkin. "I got a lawyer. I'm claiming financial abuse. Richard's family manipulated me into spending money I didn't have, and he did nothing to stop it. I probably won't win, but at least it's on record." "Good. And I want to pay you back. It'll take time. Years. But I'll pay back every cent of that $46,000 you got refunded. With interest." "Mom. No. Let me do this. Let me prove I can be the person your father thought I was. Please." I nodded. "Okay." We sat there for another hour, talking carefully around the hurt, neither of us ready to fully forgive but both of us willing to try. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't even really a truce. But it was a start. As I drove home that night, I thought about what Karen had said. About gifts and truth and whether people can accept them. My mother was trying. It might not work. We might never fully repair what got broken. But she was trying, and that counted for something. I started at Northwestern in January. Got a part-time job in the IT department. My roommate was a computer science major who taught me shortcuts I never would have found on my own. I joined a study group. Made friends. Started to build a life that was mine, not borrowed or shaped by someone else's expectations. Sometimes I still got angry. Angry at Richard and his family for being exactly who they'd always been. Angry at my mother for choosing them over me, even temporarily. Angry at myself for letting it get that far before I said no. But mostly, I felt clear. Like I'd been underwater for months and finally broken the surface. The world looked sharper now. I knew what I was worth. I knew what I wouldn't tolerate. I knew the difference between love and manipulation. My mother kept her promise. Every month, without fail, a payment arrived. She'd rebuilt her career, worked her way up, and dedicated a significant portion of her income to making things right. It wasn't really about the money anymore. It was about her keeping a promise to herself. About rebuilding integrity one payment at a time. We talked on the phone every few weeks. Careful conversations about safe topics. My classes. Her job. The weather. Slowly, over months, we started mentioning Dad again. She'd share a memory, and I'd add to it, and we'd sit with it together for a moment before moving on. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. A year after the cancelled wedding, I got a message on social media from someone I didn't know. The profile picture showed a woman in her 30s, smiling, with a golden retriever. Hi Marcus. You don't know me, but I'm Richard's second wife, Jennifer. Karen gave me your number. I wanted to reach out because I heard about what happened with your mom, and I want you to know you did the right thing. I wish I'd had the courage to walk away before I married him. You saved your mom years of pain. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, thank you. That means more than you know. She responded immediately, Richard's pattern is to find women in vulnerable places and promise them a better life. Then his family tears them down until they're so desperate for approval they'll do anything. You broke the pattern. That takes strength. It didn't feel strong. It felt like survival. Same thing, sometimes. We messaged back and forth for a while, her sharing stories that made my stomach turn. The debt she'd gone into for their wedding. The way Richard's mother had criticized everything from her clothes to her hometown. The slow erosion of self-worth until she didn't recognize herself anymore. I got out eventually, she wrote. Divorced him, moved across the country, started over. Best decision I ever made. It's been 8 years, and I finally like the person I see in the mirror again. I'm glad, I typed. And thank you for reaching out. It helps to know I'm not crazy. That my instincts were right. Your instincts were perfect. Trust them. Always. That conversation stayed with me. Knowing I wasn't alone in seeing Richard's family for what they were. Knowing other people had survived and rebuilt. It made my own rebuilding feel more possible. By the time I finished my sophomore year, my mother and I had progressed to occasional dinners. Still awkward, still careful, but warmer. She'd started therapy, which helped. Started talking about Dad without crying every time. Started mentioning things she wanted to do, travel, hobbies she'd given up, friends she'd lost touch with. I'm thinking about taking a pottery class, she told me over Thai food one evening. Your father always said I should. Said I had good hands for creating things. You should, I said. Dad was usually right about stuff like that. She smiled. Really smiled, for the first time in years. Yeah. He was. We didn't talk about Richard. Didn't need to. He'd moved on, found someone new to impress his family with. My mother had run into his mother once at the grocery store, and they'd both pretended not to see each other. It's better that way, Mom said. Some people aren't worth the energy of even acknowledging. I agreed. The final payment came 5 years after the wedding that never was. My mother had gotten a much better job, became office manager at a larger practice, then moved into hospital administration. She'd managed her money carefully, lived modestly, and sent me a payment every single month. At first it was $200. Then, as her career improved, $500. Eventually, $1,000 or more. She called right after sending the final installment to make sure I'd received it. I did, I said. Mom, you really didn't have to. Yes, I did. I needed to prove to myself I could fix what I broke. And I did. Every cent of that $46,000. It's done now. I'm proud of you. She was quiet for a moment. I'm proud of you too. For stopping me before I made the biggest mistake of my life. For being brave enough to say no when I couldn't. Your father would be proud of the man you've become. My throat got tight. Thanks, Mom. I love you, Marcus. I should have said that 3 years ago instead of everything else I said. But I'm saying it now. I love you too. After we hung up, I sat on my apartment balcony and watched the sunset. Thought about how close I'd come to losing everything, my future, my self-respect, my relationship with my mother. How one decision, one terrible, necessary decision, had saved all of it. I won't say I'd do it again. That's not quite true. I'd do a lot of things differently if I could go back. I'd have recognized the red flags earlier. Set boundaries sooner. Protected myself better. But if I was in that exact moment again, 6 days before a wedding I'd paid for and been uninvited from, knowing everything I knew then and nothing I know now? Yeah. I'd cancel it. Because some lessons are only learned the hard way. And some relationships have to break before they can be built on something honest. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom, dinner next week? I want to show you my pottery. It's terrible, but I love it. I smiled and typed back, can't wait to see it. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink and purple. Beautiful and temporary and exactly right. I sat there until the colors faded to dark, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect. Not because all the hurt had disappeared. But because I'd chosen myself when it mattered most, and that choice had rippled forward into a life I was proud of. The sophisticated vibe my mother had wanted? We never found it at the Belmont estate. But sitting on my balcony, watching the sky change colors, knowing I'd rebuilt my future and my relationship with my mother on my own terms? That felt pretty sophisticated to me. 4 years after the cancelled wedding, I graduated from Northwestern. Mom came to the ceremony. She sat in the stands with my uncle, both of them cheering louder than anyone else when they called my name. I walked across that stage thinking about the 19-year-old kid who'd almost given up this moment for someone else's dream. I was glad he'd fought back. At the reception afterward, Mom pulled me aside. We stood under a tree on campus, away from the crowd of graduates and families taking pictures. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I ran into Richard's daughter last month. Emily. She's about your age now, actually." I tensed. "Okay?" She thanked me for not marrying her father. Mom's eyes were wet, but she was smiling. Said she'd watched him go through 3 more relationships since ours ended. Same pattern every time. Find a woman who's vulnerable, promise her the world, let his family tear her apart. Emily said she tried to warn the women, but they never listened. Not until it was too late. "Why are you telling me this?" Because she said one thing differently happened with us. She said usually the women don't realize what's happening until they're already married, already trapped. But with us, someone stopped it before it got that far. Someone loved me enough to show me the truth, even when I hated them for it. She touched my arm. "She meant you, Marcus. You saved me from years of misery, and I spent so long being angry at you for it that I never properly thanked you." My throat felt tight. "You've been thanking me for 3 years. Every payment. Every dinner. Every time you show up." "I know. But I needed to say it out loud. Thank you for being stronger than I was. Thank you for loving me enough to let me hate you." We hugged there under that tree, and I felt something finally settle inside my chest. Some last piece of resentment or hurt that had been holding on, waiting for this exact moment to let go. "You're welcome," I whispered. The job offers started coming in before graduation. 3 different tech companies, all solid salaries, all interesting work. I chose a startup in Chicago, close enough to visit Mom regularly, far enough to have my own life. The work was challenging, the team was smart, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 6 months into the job, I was grabbing coffee before a meeting when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Marcus?" I turned. Richard stood there in an expensive suit, looking older than I remembered. Grayer. More tired around the eyes. "Richard," I said neutrally. "I thought that was you. You look good. All grown up." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Heard you graduated from Northwestern. Engineering, right? That's impressive." "Thanks." Awkward silence. The barista called out someone's order. Richard shifted his weight. "Look, I know things ended badly with your mother and me. I wanted to say, well, I understand why you did what you did. I was angry at the time, but I get it now." I studied him. Tried to figure out if this was genuine or just another manipulation. "Do you?" "You were protecting your investment. That's smart business. Can't fault a guy for that," he laughed, still not getting it. "Actually, I'm glad I ran into you. I'm starting a new practice, expanding the dental group. Could use someone with your tech skills to overhaul our systems. Interested?" The audacity was breathtaking. He still thought it had been about money. About business. He had no idea that what I'd done was about dignity. About refusing to be treated as less than human by people who measured worth in country club memberships and social status. "I'm not interested," I said simply. His smile faltered. "The pay would be excellent. Well above market rate." "I'm sure it would be. But I'm happy where I am." "Come on. Let's not let ancient history affect a good business opportunity. What happened with your mother was unfortunate, but we're both adults now. We can move past it." Something in me snapped. Not anger, exactly. Just exhaustion at having to exist in the same space as someone so fundamentally unable to see other people as real. "Richard, do you know why I canceled the wedding?" He blinked. "Because your mother uninvited you. You told me that." "No. I mean really why. The actual reason." "I don't understand." "I didn't cancel it because I was petty or jealous or vindictive. I canceled it because my mother forgot who she was trying to impress people who would never respect her. And I canceled it because I realized that if I let it happen, if I let her marry into your family, I'd be enabling that erasure. I'd be complicit in watching her disappear." Richard's jaw tightened. "That's not fair. I cared about your mother. You cared about having someone who made you feel generous. Someone who looked at your lifestyle with admiration instead of expectation. But the moment she couldn't meet your family's standards, you let them tear her down. You didn't defend her once. My family has high standards. There's nothing wrong with that. Your family uses those standards as weapons. To make people feel small. To maintain power. And you benefit from that, so you let it happen. I picked up my coffee. I'm not interested in working for you, Richard. Not for any amount of money. Because I learned something 4 years ago that you still haven't figured out. Some things matter more than profit. I walked away. Heard him call after me, something about me being just like my mother, dramatic, emotional, unable to see a good opportunity. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. That night, I called Mom and told her about the encounter. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, what did you say to him? I told her. All of it. By the end, she was crying. I wish I'd said something like that to him. Or to his mother. Or to anyone. I wish I'd been as brave as you. You are brave, Mom. You got out. You rebuilt. That takes courage. It took you showing me I had a choice. She paused. I'm proud of you. For knowing your worth. For not compromising it, even when it would have been easier. I learned from the best. Dad always said integrity isn't convenient, but it's not negotiable either. He did say that, didn't he? She laughed softly. I'm trying to live by it now. Better late than never. Better late than never, I agreed. A year later, I met someone. Sarah. She was a project manager at a nonprofit, brilliant and funny and kind in ways that made me realize I'd never really understood what healthy love looked like. She had her own money, her own goals, her own complete life. She didn't need me to fund her dreams or fix her problems. We just fit. When I introduced her to my mother, I watched them carefully. Watched for signs of jealousy or competition or any of the toxic dynamics I'd seen with Richard's family. Instead, they talked about books and laughed at each other's jokes, and Mom texted me later, "She's wonderful. Don't mess this up." I didn't plan to. Sarah knew the whole story. I'd told her on our third date, figuring if it was going to scare her off, better to know early. Instead, she'd listened quietly and then said, "That must have been the hardest decision you ever made." It was. But you made it anyway. Because it was right. She'd taken my hand. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. 6 months into dating, she asked me about the money. Whether I resented losing those years, working extra to rebuild what I'd given away. Sometimes, I admitted. We were cooking dinner in my apartment, nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables. But mostly I think about what I gained. I learned I could survive the worst thing I thought could happen. I learned what my boundaries were. I learned the difference between generosity and self-destruction. That's worth more than $46,000, she said. Yeah. It is. I proposed to Sarah on the anniversary of the day I'd cancelled my mother's wedding. Not because I was trying to be poetic or reclaim the date. Just because it was a sunny Saturday in the park, and she was laughing at something stupid I'd said, and I suddenly couldn't imagine my life without her in it. She said yes. Mom helped us plan the wedding. Nothing extravagant. A small ceremony at a botanical garden, 50 guests, family and close friends. The total cost was $8,000, and Sarah and I split it evenly. No pressure, no expectations, no proving anything to anyone. The night before the wedding, Mom and I sat on my apartment balcony, the same balcony where I'd sat 6 years earlier, watching the sunset and feeling at peace for the first time. Are you nervous? She asked. A little. Good nervous, though. That's how it should feel. She was quiet for a moment. I want you to know something. Watching you plan this wedding, seeing how you and Sarah work together, how you make decisions as a team, it's shown me what I should have had with Richard. What I should have demanded. You'll find it, Mom. When you're ready. She shook her head. I think I'm done looking for romance. I'm finding myself instead. That's more important. Dad would agree with that. Yeah. He would. She took my hand. Tomorrow's going to be beautiful. Not because of the flowers or the venue or any of that. But because it's real. Because it's built on honesty and respect and two people who see each other clearly. That's all I want, I said. That's all anyone should want. The wedding was perfect. Not in the glossy magazine way, not sophisticated by Richard's family standards. But perfect in the ways that mattered. Sarah's vows made me cry. My uncle gave a speech about my father that had everyone laughing and crying at the same time. Mom danced with Sarah's dad and told him he'd raised an extraordinary daughter. And me? I stood there surrounded by people who loved me for who I actually was, not who they wanted me to be, and felt grateful for every hard choice that had led me here. During the reception, Sarah pulled me aside. I have something to tell you. My heart jumped. Good something? I got the job. The director position. They called this morning. Sarah. That's incredible. I hugged her, lifting her off the ground. She'd been working toward this promotion for 2 years. There's one thing though. It's based in Seattle. We'd have to move. I set her down, looked at her face. Saw the worry there, the fear that I'd resent having to leave Chicago, leave my job, leave my mother. When do we leave? I asked. You're sure? We're a team. Where you go, I go. We'll figure out the rest. She kissed me there in the garden, and I thought about the 19-year-old version of me who'd thought giving everything away was what love required. How wrong he'd been. Real love didn't demand sacrifice. It invited partnership. We moved to Seattle 3 months later. Mom helped us pack, made terrible jokes about becoming a long-distance mother, promised to visit every other month. You're really okay with this? I asked her the night before we left. More than okay. I'm proud. You're building a life on your own terms. That's what I should have taught you to do all along. You taught me plenty of important things. And a few things not to do, she said wryly. Those lessons count too. Seattle was good. Different, rainy, full of new challenges. Sarah thrived in her new role. I found a job at a tech company working on accessibility software, making technology usable for people with disabilities. It felt meaningful in ways my previous job hadn't. And every other month, like clockwork, Mom flew out to visit. We'd take her to Pike Place Market, show her our favorite restaurants, walk along the waterfront. She started dating someone, a retired teacher named Frank who made her laugh and had zero interest in impressing anyone. He's kind, she told me. That's all I want now. Someone kind who likes the person I actually am. That's all anyone should want, I echoed her words from my wedding. 8 years after canceling the wedding that almost destroyed us both, I sat in my home office in Seattle, looking at photographs on my desk. Me and Sarah at our wedding. Mom and Frank at a pottery exhibition. My father in his classroom, smiling at the camera. The life I'd almost given up for someone else's dream. I'd saved $92,000 over 4 years. Lost most of it. Got back $46,000 in the refund. Rebuilt slowly, painfully, through night shifts and sacrifice and sheer stubborn determination. And somewhere in that process, I'd learned that the money was never really the point. The point was knowing my worth. Defending it. Refusing to be diminished by people who measured value in all the wrong ways. My mother had learned it too, eventually. Learned that sophistication wasn't about crystal chandeliers and exclusive guest lists. It was about integrity. About treating people with dignity. About building a life you didn't have to lie about or apologize for. The Belmont estate had seemed so important once. The venue that would prove my mother belonged in Richard's world. But she'd never belonged there. Neither of us had. We belonged here. In pottery studios and modest weddings and relationships built on honesty. In lives we'd chosen deliberately, not lives we'd accepted because we thought we couldn't deserve better. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't canceled that wedding. If I'd swallowed my hurt and let it proceed. If I'd convinced myself that family meant accepting mistreatment with a smile. I think my mother would have married Richard. Would have spent years trying to be someone she wasn't. Would have let his family slowly erase every part of herself that didn't fit their mold. And I would have watched it happen, complicit and guilty, knowing I could have stopped it. But I didn't let it happen. I made the hard choice. The unpopular choice. The choice that cost me relationships and made people think I was cruel. And I'd make it again in a heartbeat. Because the sophisticated vibe was never about venues or guest lists or impressing the right people. It was about looking at yourself in the mirror and recognizing the person staring back. It was about building something real instead of performing something fake. My mother understood that now. So did I. And that understanding was worth far more than the $92,000 I'd originally spent could ever buy. Story 4.
During my high-risk pregnancy, my husband refused to help with household chores, claiming he worked all day while I was just at home. When his father was hospitalized with pneumonia, I booked flights to visit him, but my husband canceled everything for a boys' weekend in Vegas. I called repeatedly from the hospital where I'd gone alone, but he sent each call to voicemail. When his father died and he finally answered, he said, "It's life, nothing new." I filed for divorce the next morning. He didn't care, until he discovered both his father's will and the prenup he'd signed without reading left him with nothing but regrets. 3 years ago, I married Marcus Chen, and for a while, I genuinely believed I'd won some kind of cosmic lottery. He was charming, successful, the kind of man who remembers your coffee order and texts you photos of dogs he sees on the street. His father, William, was this incredible person, warm, generous, the type who actually listened when you spoke. William loved me from day one, called me his daughter, not daughter-in-law. That should have been my first clue that Marcus didn't come by his better qualities naturally. But you know how it is. Love makes you stupid. Or maybe hope does. Either way, I signed the papers, wore the dress, promised forever. Then I got pregnant. Not just pregnant, high-risk pregnant. Preeclampsia, they said, with the kind of serious faces doctors make when they're trying not to scare you but definitely scaring you. Bed rest. Limited activity. My blood pressure was staging a coup against my body, and the baby, our daughter, was measuring small. Every appointment felt like holding my breath underwater, waiting to see if we'd both make it to the surface. I was 24 weeks along when everything started falling apart, though I didn't recognize it yet. I was too busy trying not to fall apart myself. I called from the couch, where I'd been stationed for the past 6 days like some kind of beached whale. My back ached. My ankles had disappeared into swollen flesh that didn't look like it belonged to me. The kitchen was a disaster from Marcus's breakfast, which apparently involved using every pan we owned to make scrambled eggs. Can you clean up before you leave? Marcus appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his suit, already checking his phone. I'm running late, babe. It'll take 5 minutes. I worked all day yesterday. I'm exhausted, he said it so casually, like it was just a fact we both accepted. Like my exhaustion didn't count because I was horizontal. Marcus, I'm not allowed to stand for more than 10 minutes at a time. The doctor said. I know what the doctor said. His voice had that edge it got sometimes, the one that made me feel like I was being unreasonable for having needs. But I can't do everything. You're home all day. Home all day. Like I was on vacation. Like I wasn't fighting to keep our daughter alive inside a body that was trying to reject her. I watched him leave without looking back, and something cold settled in my chest. Not anger yet. Just this creeping realization that I might be very, very alone in this. The kitchen stayed dirty. I cleaned it that afternoon during one of my safe standing periods, moving carefully, ignoring the way my vision spotted at the edges. I told myself it was fine. He was stressed. We were both stressed. I told myself a lot of things back then. A few days later, William called. I was lying in bed, my new permanent address, staring at the ceiling and trying to remember what it felt like to be a person instead of a fragile container. Sweetheart, William's voice was raspier than usual. I don't want to worry you, but I'm at Mercy General. They're saying I have pneumonia. My heart lurched. How bad? Oh, they're just being cautious. You know doctors. He tried to laugh, but it turned into coughing that made me wince through the phone. But I'd love to see you and Marcus. And that granddaughter of mine, even if she's still cooking. William lived in Phoenix, an 11-hour drive or a 2-hour flight from our place in Sacramento. I couldn't drive, obvious reasons, and Marcus would need to come with me anyway. But the thought of seeing William, of not being alone in this beautiful, terrifying mess of pregnancy, made something in me unclench. We'll be there, I promised. Let me talk to Marcus and book flights. I spent that evening researching flights, finding ones with extra legroom, making sure I had all my medical documentation in case something happened midair. My doctor had cleared me for essential travel, though she'd made it clear I was pushing my luck. This is against my better judgment, she'd said, but I understand it's your father-in-law. Make it quick, stay hydrated, and call me immediately if anything feels wrong. But this was William. He'd held my hand through my mother's funeral last year, had sat with me in the hospital waiting room when Marcus was stuck at work. Family shows up. That's what William always said. Marcus came home at 9, late again, smelling like the Indian place near his office. Your dad's in the hospital, I said before he could ask why I wasn't asleep. Pneumonia. He wants to see us. Something flickered across Marcus's face, too quick to read. Is it serious? Serious enough that he's admitted. I found flights for Friday morning. We can stay through the weekend, be back Monday. This Friday? Marcus set down his takeout bag with more force than necessary. Claire, I can't just drop everything. Your father is in the hospital. And he's probably fine. You know how he is, he goes to the ER if he gets a bad cold. That wasn't true and we both knew it. William was the type who'd walk around with a broken rib for a week before mentioning it. But I watched Marcus convince himself, watched him reshape reality into something more convenient. I already booked the tickets, I said quietly. We leave at 10 a.m. Then and book them. I have plans this weekend. The cold thing in my chest grew teeth. What plans? Derek's bachelor party. Vegas. We've had it scheduled for months. Derek. Marcus's college roommate, a guy I'd met twice and who'd spent both occasions talking about crypto and staring at my chest. You're choosing a bachelor party over your father in the hospital. It's not choosing, he's fine, Claire. And I can't bail on Derek. Marcus grabbed a beer from the fridge, and I heard the slight tremor in his voice that meant he knew he was wrong but was going to defend it anyway. I'm in the wedding. I'm giving a speech. I'm going to Phoenix, I said. With or without you. You shouldn't be flying at all. But I'm going to. Because that's what you do for family. The word hung there between us, sharp-edged. Marcus took a long drink, avoiding my eyes. Do what you want. But don't expect me to blow up my plans because Dad has a cough. He slept on the couch that night. I told myself it was because he didn't want to disturb me. I was getting good at telling myself things. Friday morning, I stood in our bedroom at 6 a.m., watching Marcus pack for Vegas. Watching him fold expensive shirts, check his toiletries, hum under his breath like this was all totally normal. Like his father wasn't alone in a hospital room, scared and sick and asking for his son. "You're really doing this," I said. Marcus looked up, and for just a second, I saw something like guilt flicker across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that careful blankness he'd perfected over 3 years of marriage. "I'll call Dad today. Send flowers. He'll understand." "I don't understand." "That's because you're emotional right now. The pregnancy hormones." I laughed. Actually laughed, this bitter sound that startled us both. "Don't you dare blame this on hormones. Your father is sick and you're going to Vegas to get hammered with Derek. It's not just about Vegas. It's about," he stopped, seemed to recalibrate. "I need a break, Claire. Everything's been so heavy lately. The pregnancy, your restrictions, it's all just a lot. Heavy for him. A lot for him. While I was growing a human in a body that was actively trying to kill us both." "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of this room. Go to Vegas. But if you walk out that door, Marcus, I need you to know something." I waited until he met my eyes. "I will remember this. Forever." He left 20 minutes later. Didn't kiss me goodbye. Didn't look back as his Uber pulled away. I called William from the airport. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be traveling alone." "Marcus had a work emergency," I lied, because what else could I say? "Your son chose a bachelor party over you? But I'm coming. I'll be there by noon. You're a good girl, Claire. Better than we deserve." The flight was awful. My feet swelled until my shoes cut into flesh. A baby kicked me somewhere near my ribs for 90 straight minutes. But I kept thinking about William lying in that hospital bed, about the way his voice had sounded on the phone, older somehow, more fragile than I'd ever heard it. Mercy General was the same bleach sterile as every hospital, all harsh lights and hand sanitizer that couldn't quite mask the smell of sickness. William was in room 437, and when I walked in, my heart broke a little. He looked so small in that bed. William, who'd always seemed larger than life, who could command a room just by walking into it, he looked diminished. Gray. The oxygen cannula snaked across his face, and each breath sounded wet, labored. "There's my girl," he said, and smiled, and I had to swallow hard against the tears. "Hey, William." I pulled a chair close to his bed, lowering myself carefully. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've got a couple elephants sitting on my chest, but otherwise fantastic." His hand found mine, warm and papery. "Where's Marcus?" The lie tasted worse the second time. "Caught up at work. Sends his love." Something in William's eyes said he knew I was lying, but he just squeezed my hand. "Well, I've got you. That's what matters." We talked for hours. William told me stories about Marcus as a kid, the good ones, the sweet ones, like the time 8-year-old Marcus had saved his allowance for 3 months to buy his mother flowers. I wanted to believe that boy still existed somewhere inside my husband. I wanted to believe a lot of things. William's breathing got worse as the afternoon wore on. The nurse came in more frequently, adjusting things, frowning at monitors. By evening, they were talking about moving him to the ICU. "Just a precaution," the doctor said, but her eyes told a different story. I tried calling Marcus at 6 p.m. It went to voicemail. I tried again at 7. Voicemail. At 8, I texted, "Your father is being moved to ICU. Call me." Nothing. I spent that night in the ICU waiting room, dozing in chairs that seemed designed for medieval torture, waking every time a doctor appeared with that particular expression that means bad news. My back screamed. My blood pressure was probably through the roof. The baby kicked irregularly, like she could feel my fear. I called Marcus 12 times Friday night into Saturday morning. Then 5 more times Saturday afternoon. Every single call went to voicemail. Saturday afternoon, William's condition deteriorated rapidly. Words like sepsis and respiratory failure started getting thrown around. The medical team moved with quick efficiency that terrified me more than any alarm. They let me sit with him, though. Let me hold his hand while machines breathed for him and pumped him full of medications I couldn't pronounce. You're going to be okay, I told him, knowing it was a lie, needing to say it anyway. You're strong. You're going to meet your granddaughter. William's eyes were closed, but his fingers twitched in mine. Like he heard me. Like he was fighting. I called Marcus again. And again. And again. Voicemail. Every time. Later, he'd claim his phone died. That he lost his charger. That the casino was loud and he didn't notice. All lies, probably. Or maybe not. Maybe that was worse, that he genuinely could forget about his dying father for 48 hours of blackjack and bottle service. Saturday night, at 11:47 p.m., William died. The doctor told me with that practiced gentleness they must teach in medical school, but I'd already known. I'd felt it, the way his hand went still in mine, the way the machine started shrieking, the way something shifted in the room, some ineffable presence departing. I sat there with his body for 20 minutes, crying so hard I thought I might throw up, feeling the baby moving inside me like she knew we just lost someone irreplaceable. Then I called Marcus one more time. He answered on the fourth ring. Finally. His phone was working again, apparently. Or maybe the weekend was over and he'd finally checked his messages. I didn't know. Didn't care. Claire, it's like midnight. What? Your father is dead. Silence. Long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. Marcus? I heard you. His voice was flat. Annoyed, even. In the background, I could hear music, laughter, the distinctive sounds of a casino. When? 20 minutes ago. I've been calling you for 2 days. 2 days, Marcus. He died while you were gambling in Vegas and I was here alone holding his hand. Look, I'm sorry, okay? But it's life. People die. Nothing new. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it, like maybe I'd misheard. Like maybe my husband hadn't just responded to his father's death with nothing new. What did you just say to me? I said it's life. Death happens. I can't, he sighed, irritated. Can we talk about this tomorrow? I'm kind of in the middle of something. I hung up. Then I turned off my phone, because if I had to hear his voice again, I might do something that would require legal representation. I spent that night in a hotel near the hospital, lying awake, feeling my daughter move and wondering what kind of man I'd married. Wondering what kind of mother I'd be if I stayed with someone who could hear about his father's death and say nothing new. Sunday morning, I turned my phone back on to 43 missed calls and 62 text messages, all from Marcus. I didn't read them. Instead, I called Sarah Peterson, the best divorce attorney in Sacramento, and left a voicemail asking for her earliest available appointment. Then I called my doctor and told her I needed to come home but probably shouldn't fly. She arranged for a medical transport, basically an ambulance on wheels, for Monday morning. Expensive, but I'd worry about that later. The 12-hour drive would get me home by evening. Marcus called 19 times on Sunday. I answered 0 of them. Monday evening, I was back in Sacramento, exhausted from the endless drive. The transport dropped me at home, where I found Marcus's car in the driveway and Marcus himself pacing the living room like a caged animal. Claire, thank God. I've been losing my mind. You can't just. I'm filing for divorce, I said. Come. Clear. The words had been living in my chest all weekend, and saying them out loud felt like exhaling poison. I called Sarah Peterson yesterday. Papers will be filed tomorrow. Marcus froze. You what? I'm filing for divorce. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. Claire, come on. You're upset, I get it, but you can't just. Your father died, Marcus. While you were in Vegas. While I was in the hospital holding his hand and calling you over and over. And when I finally told you, you said it's life, nothing new. I was in shock. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I walked past him toward the bedroom, each step deliberate despite the exhaustion singing through my bones. You meant it. And even if you didn't, you've shown me exactly who you are. You couldn't load a dishwasher when I was on bed rest. You chose a bachelor party over your dying father. You sent my calls to voicemail while he took his last breaths. That's not shock, Marcus. That's character. So that's it? 3 years of marriage, our baby, you're just throwing it all away? I turned to face him. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm protecting our daughter from growing up watching her mother be treated like she doesn't matter. This is insane. You're being completely irrational. Then you should be thrilled to divorce an irrational woman. I packed a bag, not much, Just enough for a few days, and called my friend Lisa. Can I stay with you for a while? Of course. What's wrong? Everything, I said, and it was true. Lisa picked me up within the hour, watched Marcus try to argue with me all the way to her car, physically stepped between us when he got too close. Marcus had this look on his face like he couldn't quite believe this was happening, like surely I'd snap out of it and remember my place. Claire, please. Let's talk about this like adults. We can talk through our attorneys, I said, and got in Lisa's car. I stayed with Lisa because I needed space to think, to breathe, to not be in the same house where Marcus could try to wear me down with arguments and apologies. Sarah advised it too, said it would look better in court, show I was taking the separation seriously and prioritizing my safety and the baby's health. Marcus could stay in the house until the divorce was final. I had somewhere safe to be. The next week was a blur of legal consultations and doctor's appointments and trying not to have a complete breakdown while my body continued its rebellion. My blood pressure spiked dangerously high. They admitted me for observation, pumped me full of medication, talked about inducing early if it didn't stabilize. Marcus tried to visit. I had security turn him away. He texted constantly. I blocked his number. He showed up at Lisa's apartment at 2 a.m., drunk, crying, saying he was sorry, he didn't mean it, he loved me. Lisa threatened to call the police. He left. Sarah Peterson was everything I'd hoped for, sharp, efficient, utterly unsympathetic to Marcus's attempts at reconciliation. Your prenup is very favorable to you, she said during our second meeting. Did you read it before signing? I read it. Marcus didn't. The prenup had been William's idea. He'd insisted, despite my protests, that it wasn't necessary, that it wasn't romantic. William had looked at me with those kind, knowing eyes and said, "Humor an old man. Sometimes love needs protection." Marcus had been insulted by the whole thing, I remembered. Had barely glanced at it before scribbling his signature, saying he wasn't going to treat our marriage like a business transaction and that he trusted me. His attorney had advised him to read it carefully. William had practically begged him to take it seriously. But Marcus, in his arrogance, had dismissed them both. I thought he was being romantic. Turns out he was being reckless. Turns out William knew his son better than I did. The prenup was simple. In the event of divorce, Marcus kept only what he'd brought into the marriage. Given that I'd had a successful business and substantial savings while Marcus had been recovering from bad investments and worse spending habits, that meant Marcus would leave with approximately what he'd entered with, very little. He's going to fight this, Sarah warned. The prenup is airtight, but he'll try. Let him try. Marcus tried. Oh, how he tried. His attorney argued duress, claimed Marcus had been pressured into signing, suggested I'd manipulated him. Sarah demolished every argument with a kind of precision that probably cost me a fortune per hour and was worth every penny. 3 weeks after I filed, William's attorney called. "Mrs. Chen, I'm handling William Chen's estate. There are some matters we need to discuss regarding his will." My stomach dropped. I don't want anything from William's estate. That should go to Marcus. Actually, that's what we need to discuss. Can you come to my office tomorrow? I went, confused and grieving and so heavily pregnant I could barely fit behind the steering wheel. The attorney, Gerald Hopkins, 60-something with sympathetic eyes, had me sit before he dropped the bomb. "William changed his will 6 months ago. He left everything to you and your daughter. Marcus gets a personal letter, but no financial inheritance." I stared at him. That can't be right. It's right. Mr. Chen was very specific. He included a video message explaining his reasoning, if you'd like to see it. I did want to see it. I also didn't want to see it. I nodded anyway. Gerald turned his computer screen toward me and pressed play. William appeared, sitting in what looked like this same office. He looked healthier then, stronger. But his eyes were serious. "Claire, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry for that. I wanted to meet my granddaughter." He paused, composed himself. "I'm leaving everything to you because I know you'll use it wisely. You'll provide for that baby, give her the life she deserves. Marcus would waste it. I've watched him waste every opportunity, every gift I've ever given him, because he's never learned to value anything he didn't earn himself. Maybe being cut off will teach him. Maybe it won't. But I won't reward his selfishness anymore." William leaned forward, and I could see tears in his eyes. "You're a good person, Claire. Better than my son deserves, frankly. I'm sorry he's put you through whatever he's put you through, and I know he has, because you wouldn't be watching this video if things were good. I hope you find someone who sees your worth. I hope my granddaughter grows up knowing she comes from strength. And I hope, somehow, Marcus grows up too. Though I'm not betting on it. He smiled, sad and knowing. Take care of yourself and that baby. And don't let Marcus guilt you. You've earned every penny of this inheritance just by being the daughter I wish I'd had. The video ended. I sat there crying, huge heaving sobs that scared Gerald until I assured him the baby was fine. I was fine, nothing was fine, but we were both physically okay. William's estate was substantial. The kind of substantial that meant my daughter would have college paid for, would never worry about money, would have opportunities I'd only dreamed about. And Marcus got nothing. Sarah called it poetic justice. I called it devastating. Marcus found out about the will 3 days later. He showed up at Lisa's apartment again, but this time he wasn't drunk. This time he was coldly, furiously sober. You turned him against me, he said through the door. My own father. I didn't have to, I called back. You did that yourself. I'm contesting the will. I'm his son. I have rights. Contest away. It won't change anything. He did contest it. His attorney argued undue influence, claimed I'd manipulated William, pulled out every trick in the book. But William had documented everything. He'd had a psychiatric evaluation done when he changed the will, proving he was of sound mind. He'd recorded multiple conversations explaining his reasoning. He'd made it airtight. Just like he'd made my prenup airtight. The day our divorce was finalized, I was 37 weeks pregnant and approximately the size of a house. Sarah had argued for an expedited process given my medical situation, and miraculously, it had worked. Marcus didn't contest the divorce itself, only the prenup and the will, both of which were airtight. Without a fight over the actual dissolution of marriage, the process moved faster than normal. 3 months from filing to final decree. Still felt like forever when you're carrying the human. Marcus stood in the courtroom looking like someone had hollowed him out from the inside. This isn't over, he said as we left. You can't keep me from my daughter. I'm not trying to keep you from her. You'll have visitation rights. Supervised, given your recent behavior, but rights nonetheless. If you want to be in her life, be in her life. Just know that I will document everything, and if you pull the same selfish garbage with her that you pulled with me, those rights will disappear. He opened his mouth to argue, but his attorney pulled him away. I drove home, my home, because the prenup meant I kept the house too, and collapsed on the couch and cried. Not because I was sad. Because I was free. 2 weeks later, at 39 weeks, my water broke at 3 in the morning. No dramatic gush like in movies, just a slow leak that had me Googling is this pee or amniotic fluid for 20 panicked minutes. I called Lisa, who picked me up and drove me to the hospital doing 70 in a 45 zone while I tried to breathe through contractions and not throw up in her car. Labor was long. 23 hours of it, every minute proving that whoever designed the human body was either a sadist or had never actually tried pushing a whole person through an opening the size of a bagel. They almost had to do a C-section, but at the last minute, my stubborn daughter decided to cooperate. Sophia Elizabeth arrived at 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday, screaming her tiny lungs out, perfect and furious and mine. I held her and ugly cried and thought about William, who would have loved her so much. Marcus came to the hospital 6 hours later. He stood in the doorway and looking uncertain, holding flowers and a teddy bear like props in a play he didn't understand. Can I meet her? I wanted to say no. Wanted to protect Sophia from the kind of father who says nothing new when his own father dies. But I looked at this tiny person in my arms, this perfect combination of possibility and hope, and I thought about how many people had failed Marcus as a child, and I didn't want to be another person making that choice. You can meet her. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. I waited until he looked at me. She will always know that you chose Vegas over your dying father. She will always know that you treated me like I didn't matter. I won't lie to her about who you are. So if you want to be her father, really be her father, you need to decide what kind of man you're going to be. Because this? I gestured between us. This is your last chance to get it right. He held Sophia for 17 minutes. She slept through all of it, tiny and trusting, her hand curled around his finger. When he gave her back, there were tears on his face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry for everything. Tell her that when she's old enough to understand what it means, I said. Then show her through your actions that you meant it. He left. I don't know if he'll come back, if he'll be the father Sophia deserves or the father he's always been. But that's his choice now, not mine. I took Sophia home to a house that was quiet and mine and full of possibility. I read her William's letter, The one he'd left for her in his will, sealed and marked for Sophia Elizabeth, whenever she needs it. I cried while I read it, even though she was too young to understand, because she needed to hear her grandfather's voice, even if only through my tears. The letter was beautiful. It talked about strength and kindness and never settling for less than she deserved. It talked about how proud he was to have her as a granddaughter, even though he'd never meet her. And at the end, he wrote, "Your mother is the bravest person I know. Listen to her. Learn from her. And remember that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing." I'm still figuring out how to be a single mother. Still figuring out how to manage the house and the baby and the residual health issues from the pregnancy. Still figuring out how to forgive Marcus, not for him, but so I don't carry that weight forever. But I'm figuring it out. With William's inheritance, I have the freedom to stay home with Sophia, to heal, to build a life that looks nothing like the one I'd planned but somehow feels right, anyway. Marcus pays child support, not much, given his financial situation, but something. He visits twice a month, supervised by his mother, who calls me weekly to apologize for her son and beg to see her granddaughter. I let her. She's not responsible for Marcus's choices, and Sophia deserves to know her grandmother. Sometimes, late at night when Sophia is sleeping and the house is quiet, I think about that girl who married Marcus 3 years ago. The one who believed love was enough, who made excuses for red flags, who thought compromise meant losing yourself. I want to tell her it gets worse before it gets better. I want to tell her she's stronger than she knows. I want to tell her that sometimes the person you need to save isn't your husband or your marriage, it's yourself. But mostly, I want to tell her thank you. Because her choices, however painful, led to Sophia. Led to this life I'm building from scratch, messy and uncertain but wholly mine. Marcus texted last week. Just 3 words, "Can we talk?" I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But for the first time since this whole nightmare started, the decision feels like mine to make. And that, more than anything else, feels like winning. I look at Sophia sleeping in her bassinet, her tiny chest rising and falling, her hands curled into fists like she's ready to fight the world. She is William's nose. My stubborn chin. And hopefully, eventually, the wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go. The prenup that Marcus never read gave me financial security. William's will gave us a future. But the real inheritance, the one that matters, was learning that I deserve better than someone who treats love like an inconvenience. Sophia will grow up knowing her mother chose herself, chose her, chose the hard right over the easy wrong. She'll grow up watching me build a life where people don't get excuses for being cruel, where I'm sorry means changed behavior, not just words. She'll grow up knowing her grandfather loved her even though they never met, and that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are. Marcus will be part of her life or he won't. That's his choice. But she'll always have me, and William's love, and the example of what it looks like to walk away from someone who doesn't see your worth. That's the story I'll tell her someday, when she's old enough to understand. Not with bitterness, but with the hard-won wisdom of someone who survived by refusing to make herself smaller for someone else's comfort. And maybe, if I'm lucky, she'll never need that lesson. Maybe she'll meet people who see her value from the start, who choose her even when it's hard, who understand that love isn't just a feeling, it's a series of decisions you make every day. But if she does need it, she'll have this story. She'll know that her mother stood in a hospital room, alone, holding her grandfather's hand as he died while her father played blackjack in Vegas. She'll know her mother chose dignity over convenience, self-respect over settlement. She'll know that sometimes the trash takes itself out, and all you have to do is let it go. The morning light filters through the window, soft and golden, turning Sophia's skin luminous. She stirs, makes a small noise, and I lift her into my arms. She's warm and solid and real, proof that something beautiful can come from something broken. "Good morning, baby girl," I whisper into her soft hair. "Let me tell you about the man you're named after, and why your middle name is Elizabeth, after the mother I wish you could have met, the woman who taught me that strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up." She opens her eyes, dark and watchful and full of questions she's too young to ask. I have 17 years to give her the answers. 17 years to show her what it means to be a woman who doesn't settle, who doesn't shrink, who doesn't apologize for taking up space in her own life. 17 years to make sure she never marries someone who says nothing new when the people we love leave us forever. My phone buzzes. "Marcus again, please. I know I messed up. Let me fix this." I delete the message without responding. But here's what I didn't tell you yet, what happened in those weeks between filing for divorce and William's death. The part that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. 3 days before William got sick, he'd called me. Not Marcus, me. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was on the couch again, watching some home renovation show and pretending the pain in my lower back was normal pregnancy discomfort and not my body staging a mutiny. Claire, honey, do you have a minute? Something in his voice made me sit up straighter. Of course. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. He paused, and I heard him take a breath. How is Marcus treating you? Really treating you? My throat closed up. Because nobody had asked me that. Not directly. Not with that tone that said I already know the answer, but I need to hear you say it. He's stressed, I said finally. We both are. Claire. Just my name. But the way he said it, disappointed, sad, like he'd hoped I'd trust him more than that. He's not helping, I whispered. With anything. He acts like I'm on vacation while I'm literally trying to keep our daughter alive. And when I ask for help, he makes me feel like I'm being unreasonable. Silence on the other end. Long enough that I thought maybe I'd said too much, crossed some line you don't cross about someone's son. Then, I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Isn't it? William's voice cracked. I raised him. I watched his mother baby him, make excuses for him, and I didn't push back hard enough. I thought he'd grow out of it. I thought marriage, responsibility, a child, I thought it would change him. People don't change unless they want to. No, William agreed. They don't. Claire, I want you to know something. You have options. Always. If things get worse, if you need anything, I mean anything, you call me. Not Marcus. Me. William. I mean it. That baby you're carrying? She's my blood. But so are you now. And I take care of my family. I cried after we hung up. Hormones, yes, but also relief. Because someone saw it. Someone validated that I wasn't crazy, wasn't asking for too much, wasn't failing at being a wife. That was the last real conversation we had before pneumonia put him in that hospital bed. I think about that call a lot. About how William knew, probably long before I was ready to admit it, that his son was failing me. About how he tried, in his way, to give me an escape route. The prenup had been his first gift. The phone call was his second. The will was his third and final one, a safety net I didn't even know I needed until I was falling. Marcus's attorney tried everything to break William's will. They brought in handwriting experts to analyze William's signature. They suggested I'd isolated William from his son, poisoned their relationship. They even implied that my pregnancy had been a manipulation, a way to secure William's fortune. Sarah shut that down so fast and so thoroughly that Marcus's attorney actually apologized to her in the hallway afterward. The will contest dragged on even after the divorce was finalized, but we all knew how it would end. Your father-in-law, Sarah told me after one particularly brutal deposition, was a very smart man. Every conversation he had with his attorney about the will, he recorded. Every decision was documented. He left a paper trail that makes it crystal clear. He wasn't coerced, wasn't confused, wasn't influenced by anyone. He just knew his son. She pulled out her laptop and played me one of the recordings. William's voice filled her office. Marcus has never valued anything he didn't have to work for. I've given him everything, education, opportunities, money when he made bad investments. And every time, he's squandered it. He treats people like they're disposable, including his wife. Especially his wife. I've watched him take that girl for granted, and it makes me sick. So no, I'm not leaving him my estate. I'm leaving it to someone who'll use it to build something good. Someone who understands the difference between wealth and worth. I sat in Sarah's office and cried listening to a dead man defend me. He really saw it, I said when I could speak. He saw everything. He did. And he made sure his son would face consequences. That takes courage. It took more than courage. It took love. The kind of love that says I see you struggling, and I'm going to make sure you're okay, even if I'm not here to see it. Marcus didn't take the will news well. Beyond the contest, beyond the legal battles, he spiraled. Started showing up at places he knew I'd be, my doctor's office, Lisa's apartment, even the prenatal yoga class I tried attending once before my blood pressure made it too dangerous. Just talk to me, he'd say, every time. You can't just throw away our marriage. But I could. I had. And every time he showed up, every time he violated the boundaries I'd set, he proved I'd made the right choice. The worst incident happened at 35 weeks pregnant. I was at the grocery store, against doctor's orders, but I was going stir-crazy and needed to feel like a human person for 20 minutes. I was debating between two types of ice cream when Marcus appeared at the end of the aisle. My heart rate spiked so fast I felt dizzy. "Claire, please. Just 5 minutes." "No." I put both ice cream containers in my cart and tried to move past him. He stepped in front of me. "I'm not leaving until you listen." "Then I'm calling security." I pulled out my phone. "I'm your husband. You're my ex-husband in 2 weeks. Move." He didn't move. Just stood there with this expression I'd seen 100 times, wounded, like I was the one being unreasonable. Like his presence, his demands, his refusal to accept my choices were somehow justified by his pain. A woman in her 60s appeared next to us. "Is this man bothering you, honey?" "Yes," I said, and watched Marcus's face flush red. "I'm her husband. I don't care if you're the Pope." "She said you're bothering her. Back up or I'm getting management." The woman positioned herself between us, this tiny fierce thing with gray hair and a cart full of cat food. Marcus backed up. Turned and left without another word, but not before giving me a look that said this isn't over. The woman walked me to my car. Waited until I was inside with the doors locked. "You got someone you can call? You shouldn't be alone right now." "I'm okay. Thank you." Men like that don't give up easy. "Be careful, honey." I drove to Lisa's, shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. She took one look at my face and called Sarah, who filed for a restraining order that afternoon. Marcus contested that too. Lost. The judge looked at him and said, "Mr. Chen, your wife has made her wishes clear. You are not entitled to her time, her attention, or her presence. I suggest you focus on becoming the kind of man worthy of being a father instead of harassing a woman in her 3rd trimester." Marcus left the courthouse looking like something had finally broken in him. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered, nothing new. The week before Sophia was born, Marcus's mother, Patricia, called me. We'd spoken a few times since I'd filed, brief awkward conversations where she apologized for her son and begged to be part of her grandchild's life. This time was different. "Claire, I need to tell you something about Marcus." I settled into the couch, one hand on my enormous belly. "Okay." When he was 12, his best friend's father died. Car accident. Marcus watched his friend fall apart, watched the funeral, watched everything. And afterward, you know what he said to me? "What?" He said, "At least I don't have to be sad like Tommy. Not I'm glad my dad is okay, not I feel bad for Tommy. Just relief that he didn't have to experience grief." Patricia's voice shook. I thought it was just kids being kids, not understanding death yet. But now I wonder if I raised a boy who can't feel things the way other people do. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know, what he said about William dying, that nothing new comment, that's who he is. I don't think he meant to be cruel. I think he genuinely doesn't understand why it matters. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner, didn't do something to fix it." "You can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken." "No," Patricia agreed. "You can't. But you can protect yourself and that baby from them. So I'm calling to tell you, you have my full support. Whatever you need, whatever Sophia needs. I failed Marcus as a mother. I won't fail my granddaughter." We cried together on the phone, two women mourning different versions of the same man. After Sophia was born, after those first chaotic weeks of no sleep and constant feeding and trying to remember what day it was, Patricia became a lifeline. She came over twice a week, brought food, held Sophia while I showered or napped or just sat staring at the wall trying to process everything that had happened. "You're doing great," she'd tell me, every time. "I don't feel like it." "That's how you know you are. The ones who think they're doing great are usually disasters." Marcus came to those visits sometimes. Sat in my living room, his former living room, holding his daughter and looking lost. He never tried to argue anymore. Never asked about reconciliation. Just sat there with this grief etched into his face that I think he was finally starting to understand. One afternoon, when Sophia was about 6 weeks old, he said, "I read Dad's letter. The one he left me." I didn't respond. Just waited. He said I was the biggest disappointment of his life. Said he tried everything to teach me empathy, responsibility, basic human decency. Said I'd failed at all of it. Marcus's voice was flat. He said the day you filed for divorce was the first time he'd been proud of anything connected to me, because you'd had the strength to leave. Marcus, no, let me finish. He looked up, and his eyes were red. He was right. About everything. And I know saying I'm sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I can't undo leaving you alone while you were dying, or ignoring your calls while he was dying, or any of it. But I need you to know, I see it now. I see what I did. Seeing it isn't the same as changing it. I know. He looked down at Sophia, sleeping in his arms. But maybe I can change it for her. Maybe I can be the father she deserves, even if I wasn't the husband you deserved. I didn't believe him. Not fully. But I wanted to. For Sophia's sake, I wanted to believe people could grow, even people like Marcus who seemed fundamentally missing some crucial human component. Then prove it, I said. Not with words. With actions. Show up. Be consistent. Put her first, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And so the weeks passed. Sophia grew from that tiny 6-week-old into a more alert, vocal 3-month-old. He's been trying. 3 months in, and he's been trying. He takes her every other Sunday now, supervised visits at first, but after 2 months of consistent attendance and completing a parenting class, the court agreed to unsupervised visits. He's proven he can handle basic childcare without somehow breaking our daughter. He quit his job, the high-stress finance position that had been his excuse for everything. Got something with better hours, less pay, more flexibility. Moved into a smaller apartment. Started therapy, real therapy, not just to look good for court, but actual work on whatever's wrong inside him. Is it enough? I don't know. Ask me in 5 years, 10 years, when Sophia's old enough to have opinions about her father. But it's something. It's more than he gave me, which is simultaneously painful and hopeful. William's inheritance has been a strange gift. The money itself is helpful, obviously. It means I can stay home with Sophia, can afford the medical care I still need for my blood pressure issues, can build a life that isn't defined by desperation. But the real gift is what it represented. William saw me. Saw my value. Saw my strength even when I couldn't see it myself. And he made sure I'd be okay, made sure his granddaughter would be okay, made sure that Marcus's selfishness couldn't destroy us. That matters more than the dollar amount. I started a blog when Sophia was 2 months old, nothing fancy, just honest posts about single motherhood and surviving a high-risk pregnancy and learning to trust yourself when everyone else is telling you you're wrong. In just a few weeks, it's gotten bigger than I expected. Women reach out daily with their own stories, their own moments of choosing themselves over marriages that were killing them slowly. You saved my life, one woman wrote. I was making all the same excuses you made. Reading your story made me see, this isn't normal. This isn't okay. I filed for divorce yesterday. That's the other inheritance William left me. Not money, purpose. A reason to tell this story, ugly and painful as it is, because somewhere out there is another woman lying on a couch, pregnant and alone, wondering if she's asking for too much when she asks her husband to load the dishwasher. She's not asking for too much. She deserves better. We all do. Sophia is stirring now, making those little grunting noises that mean she's about to demand breakfast with the fury of someone who's never been told no in her entire 3 months of life. I lift her up, breathe in that impossibly sweet baby smell, and think about William. About how he never got to hold her, never got to see her smile, never got to be the grandfather he would have been, the kind who slips her candy and teaches her card tricks and tells her she can be anything. But he's here anyway. In the house we live in because of his planning. In the security we have because of his love. In the example he set of what it means to see someone struggling and help them, even when, especially when, it costs you something. Your grandfather would have loved you so much, I whisper to Sophia. And he did love you, even though you never met. That's the kind of love that matters, the kind that protects you even after it's gone. She responds by spitting up on my shoulder. Motherhood is glamorous like that. My phone buzzes again. But this time it's not Marcus, it's Patricia. Coming over in an hour. Bringing lasagna. Don't argue. I don't argue. I've learned, slowly, to accept help. To believe that accepting help doesn't make me weak or burdensome or any of the things Marcus made me feel when I asked for basic human decency. The doorbell rings exactly an hour later. Patricia, true to her word, with lasagna and also a bag of groceries and a determined expression. You look tired, she says, which is grandmother speak for you look like death. Sophia was up every 3 hours last night. We're still working on sleeping through the night. Give her here. Go sleep. I'll wake you when she's hungry. I hand over my daughter and stumble toward my bedroom like a zombie. Fall into bed still wearing yesterday's clothes, and for the first time in 3 months, sleep without dreaming. When I wake 3 hours later, Patricia has done my dishes and folded my laundry and somehow made my house look like people live in it instead of like a disaster zone for tiny humans. You don't have to do that, I say, groggy and embarrassed. I know. But I want to. Claire, I need you to understand something. Patricia sits next to me, Sophia asleep in her arms. William called me before he died. From the hospital. I didn't know it would be the last time we'd speak, but he did. He was struggling to breathe, could barely get words out. And you know what he used his last conversation with me for? I shake my head. He made me promise to take care of you and Sophia. Made me swear that no matter what happened with Marcus, I'd be there for you both. He said, Patricia, that girl is a miracle. Don't let my son ruin her. She's crying now, and so am I. I should have been there at the hospital. But we'd been divorced for 15 years, and I was out of state visiting my sister. By the time I got William's message and booked a flight, he was already gone. So when I show up with lasagna and do your dishes, I'm keeping my promise to him. I'm doing what I should have done years ago, choosing the right side. We sit there together, 3 generations of women connected by love and loss, and the ghost of a man who saw clearly enough to protect us all. Some things can't be fixed. Some things shouldn't be. And that's okay. Because here, in this quiet afternoon light, with my daughter sleeping peacefully and my former mother-in-law folding tiny onesies and my future spread out before us like a blank page, I have everything I need. Freedom. Security. A future I get to write myself. And absolutely zero regrets about the man I left with nothing but his own. The man who learned too late that nothing new was the exact moment he lost everything that mattered.